Real wealth is about getting the freedom of opportunities that you seek by unlocking your ability to understand the world of investments. In an endeavor to help you attain the goal of financial independence by enabling a learning environment around the idea of personal finance, we bring to you this special event. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan and welcome to Nivesh Mahakumbh 2021. This is a unique investor awareness initiative brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund in association with the Hindustan Times. For many of us, decoding personal finance concepts could appear time consuming and stressful. You might worry about securing your wealth without knowing the right way to invest, especially as the words volatility and risk come into the picture. In uncertain times, you need a resource which combines the best in terms of advice and insights on financial management to break through the myths. And that's what the Nivesh Mahakumbh, a one-of-a-kind platform, aims to address by bringing the best minds in the industry together to provide you with the power of attaining financial independence. So, let us venture on a journey where the mind is without fear and head is held high, and together may our country awaken to a future where prosperity abounds. Let us begin by honoring the very idea of freedom by starting with our national anthem. Salute to our nation. Thank you so much, everyone. I'd like to now introduce Mr. K.S. Rao, who heads Investor Education and Distribution Development at Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC, to talk about the purpose of this mega virtual event and share more information on investment awareness initiatives. Over to you, Mr. Rao.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gautam. Indeed, it was a lovely introduction as always. And after this national anthem to start the session, indeed, it's a privilege, and you always feel there is a goosebumps, when you have a national anthem. Before I go in detail on the Nivesh Mahakumbh, shall we start our day with a prayer song? Shall we have a prayer of the Aditya Vandana?
That video will be coming up.
Aditya Savita Surya Khagah Bhusha Gabhastiman Suvarna Sadrisho Bhanur Vishwareta Divakaraha.
Gacchami
Thank you
Oh,
so
that was a
much.
moving prayer.
Thank you so much. It's always prayers to the divine is a peace to the soul. Probably today's session will be a prosperity to the life. And welcome back. And good morning to everyone. Indeed, it's an honor to be here representing Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. I take this opportunity to thank HT Media and thank you so much, Gautam, once again. And it's like uh, some of us gets confused. And on my social media chat, I was looking at one comment: what Nivesh to do with Mahakumbh or Kumbh? It's a very interesting question. And every 4 years, millions of Indians gather at their river places and they participate in the Kumbh Mela. They take a dip, and it's a belief. It purifies our soul, and it's a washes away our sins. It's a spiritual experience. It's a bliss, and it's like no other world. At Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund, of course, our mission is to understandably more material, but we pursue with a zeal, and it's a no less. After all, financial wellness is as important as a financial well-being, and it's a spiritual well-being. That's our outreach. We always This Nivesh Mahakumbh is very close to our heart, and today it is a 25th Nivesh Mahakumbh, and it's always we do this with a festive fear, and it's a grand scale. That's the reason we call this as a Nivesh Mahakumbh. I'll narrate why this Nivesh Mahakumbh and why we talk this as a kumbh. And let me also say it with a little bit of humbleness, but with a pride. It is We just concluded our 10,000 programs in this investor education side from Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. And Indian financial regulator, SEBI, always talks about protected investor, and educated investor is the more protected investor. At AMFI and the mutual funds, and some of us like Aditya Birla, we have taken this mission and moved out and to teach and to reach people in the financial literacy. It is the mutual fund SAIA, that's where you can see. And tomorrow we are all celebrating our 75th Independence Day. And this Independence Day is something very different. I think our Honorable Prime Minister said it is a Azadi Ki Amrit Mahotsav. And it's like, under his leadership, we have seen Digital India, Startup India, and Stand Up India. Probably one thing is missing for all of us today. Everything the government is doing to reach us to inching towards to the 5 trillion economy. But what is that missing link for us today is India as a nation lacks in the financial literacy. And it's only 14 people out of 100 are financially literate as per the latest survey from the world charts. And 88% of the Indians today, they depend on the retirement on their children. And I keep telling on most of my awareness programs, it is a message is very clear. Let all of us are independent. That is a financially independent. Like when I tell, like, you don't need to be your emergency fund for your child. And similarly, you can't be a retirement fund for your child cannot be a retirement fund. And let us think about this financial independence today, how we can get there. And there is a shocking information on this world survey. I look at it, it's only 6% of women, especially I'm talking about the homemakers who participate in the personal family financial affairs. Can that be a financial conversations for the women at home? And all of us can have this chat very comfortably. What is the financial independence for individuals and the family? And the last but not the least, very shocking information is the millennials. Of course, in the last 2 years, we have seen so many demat accounts and they're coming back and invested. And last 1 year, even in the mutual fund folios, we look at around 40% coming from the millennials. However, still they lag more, and they need to take utmost care of their finances because, their counterparts elsewhere have a social security. Here, we do not have a social security. And 2020 and 2021, the changed the way we live, and we changed the definition of VUCA itself. Probably volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity has undergone with a virus and so much of unpredictability and chaos and anxiety. Probably 2021 would have brought some positive news for us. It could be a virus, and it could be a vaccine which has come to us, and there is an understanding that we are going to live with this, probably with the social distance and masks, and there is a clarity and there is an alertness, and it's a time for us to look our financial to alertness. And COVID has forced many of us to look at fresh on the finances, and wealth is the only concern after the health. And journey from the COVID to COVID, where we were reaching out various people, we were just looking at, there are three parameters which we were looking at people who are lacking, those who are struggling. The first one is they do not have enough contingency fund. The second one is no adequate insurance, either health or life. And third one is organizing the finances. Most of the people, they succumbed to virus, but unfortunately, it is, they have lost without, they have not created any wealth, any will. And we need to look that as part of the financial independence. And this Azadi Ki Amrit Mahotsav at Aditya Birla, we too celebrated in the over last 15 days. It is 100 webinars and reached out across the country. Nivesh Mahakumbh is one of such things today we are doing. And what is this Nivesh Mahakumbh? I didn't speak to you as of now. We started way back in 2015 in Jabalpur at Central India. And Nivesh, when we go to Kumbh Mela, we take a dip. At Nivesh Mahakumbh, we understand DIP. That DIP is DIP. That's an acronym. D is a delayed gratification, which is fundamental principle for making the sacrifices for today and enjoying the life for tomorrow. I is the impact of inflation and how we can make our investments inflation proof. And the P is the eighth wonder of the world. We got talk about the power of compounding. If we can make these three words understanding, I think that's a dip we can take. And this is where Nivesh Mahakumbh comes. Welcome to this Nivesh Mahakumbh of 25th edition. And today it's going to be three areas, three panels, and it's a focusing on your retirement. And probably we need to reimagine the retirement. And heart of the home economy need to come to the participation in the Indian economy. And that's where the woman comes into your role. And we are going to have a very special edition. And every millennial managing their money better so that they can become wealthier. And financial freedom is something, your freedom to choose family over finances, your freedom to choose your time spent on your interest in projects, your freedom to work for the job you love. And that's where, it's regardless of pay. Your passion becomes your profession, then your paycheck will become a bonus. That's where personal finance we talk about. But of course, the financial freedom, the personal finance, the person comes before the finance. And where you need to, each of us may have a different journey. Let there be a destination is a financial freedom. I take this up. I think today's session can lead us and show the path and show the road. That's the GPS to us. Let us come back and we have a series of sessions. And I take this opportunity again to thank my friends in HT Media. And do log into our website, and we are live on the YouTube. And at Aditya Birla Mutual Fund website, we have many more educational materials. And we have a personally curated magazine called Samruddhi. You can download this. I take this opportunity to have my CEO and MD, Mr. Bala, whose vision and whose mission in the last 7 years we reached out across. And that's where we are not only the growing in terms of our assets, but we are growing in terms of our reach to educate people and empower our channel partners. Many of my channel partners joined in this mission to get there. And thank you so much, and looking forward for a great day. As you celebrate your Independence Day tomorrow, take a time to start a financial dating with your family and make your date for your financial independence. Let the journey begin. Thank you so much once again. Wishing you all the good luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rao. Indeed, the age-old wisdom of the Gita, I'm reminded by that. Karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Focus on the work and not on the fruits of the work. They will come, but focus on the work. And that holds true even for everything in life, including personal finance. Put in that discipline, put in that due diligence, and focus on the goals of your life. And do not just keep chasing returns. The returns will come when the time is right. But thank you so much for setting the context of the event. And as you mentioned, we have Bala, Mr. Bala Subramaniam, who's the MD and Chief Executive at Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund with us. And he's here to present the keynote address. So I'd like to hand it over to Bala for his keynote address.
Thanks, Mr. Srinivasan, and thanks, Mr. Rao, to be a part of today's session. I'm also happy to see the launch of the program called For Her around the Independence Day, which is just another 2 days away, around the celebration. Also talking about the financial freedom for women is something I'm quite happy to launch this event today along with HT Media and continue to service the large pool of investing public in the Indian mutual fund industry and the capital market as part of our awareness initiative. That's something I'm taking proud. I'm feeling proud. I'm also happy that we are doing this event continuously in order to encourage more and more people to have financial freedom. I think clearly, I think financial market point of view, I think K.S. Rao mentioned about we at Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund have been growing our size and catering to the various needs of the customers. I think what has remained constant the whole period is the change that has been coming and hitting the financial world in general. Also, the world itself revolves around many uncertainties in the financial market. Even non-financial market also do go through various uncertainties. Something what we have witnessed the last 1.5 years, never heard of, never seen in our own lifetime. Definitely all such events happens once in 100 years or once in 70, 80 years. Therefore, what we have to think about what has happened in the last 1.5 years is something will also get cured very fast. The way I think steps have been taken towards vaccination and so on and so forth. I'm sure things will be back to normal very soon. I think the one thing is becoming very clear in the whole pandemic, post-pandemic. I think what has been discovered in general, that every economy go through a tough time and also go through a good time. I think what remains constant, that especially a time where the technology is changing, especially a time where the consumer behaviors are changing, especially at a time where economic various parameters are also undergoing a change, the VUCA world becomes, now it looks like it become permanent. In the sense, volatility is part and parcel of the game, part and parcel of the capital market, part and parcel of the financial market. Uncertainty, of course, is surrounding around everything. And complexity, as the time progresses, definitely complexity keeps rising. And ambiguity in terms of whatever I do, whether the outcome would come, it remains a $1 billion question mark. And frankly, in my own experience, being part of the Indian capital market for the last 27, 28 years, or maybe close to 30 years, this VUCA world has remained constant. And despite they remain constant, the financial markets have only gone to a different level at each point of time, because the money keeps growing at an average of about 11.5%, 12%, in line with the overall nominal GDP that we normally expect. Therefore, the financial market continues to grow because of simple money supply growth. I think it's a simple mathematics that the GDP grows at, say, some 7-8% on average. Inflation grows about 4 to 5%. Therefore, the nominal GDP each year has been going about 11.5%. And this something goes through ups and downs. There are years where the GDP gets impacted. There are years where GDP gets pulled up. And this cycle, of course, we see it. And the capital market also go through a similar kind of ups and downs. And financial market remains one of the market which is provider of the capital for every needs of the investors, every needs of the users that we have, and that continues to gain more and more prominence. So therefore, the financial market becoming complex, so to speak, in order to take care of the money that is being earned, or the money that is needed for the purpose of building business, and so on and so forth. Therefore, the financial market gaining more and more prominence in the change world. The second is financial market generally is considered as proxy to the economy. Any sentiment that, of course, impacts the world at large and country at large, India is a country at large, and financial market health is a true reflection of how the country is performing. Therefore, the financial market remains a proxy to the economy. And that is being the case, clearly I think the opportunity is something while it remains, one need to also have the discipline of how the money can be put to use in various forms. Resource management and also the deployment of such resources, it remains a key to the success for every company, for every individual, for every household. That remains constant and remains important. The second, what is also remaining important, the cost factor is keeps rising. I think one of the things, of course, that probably one would have thought about, say, 100 years back, or maybe 10 years back, or 20 years back, any prices that we have seen, today all prices in any parameter, if you look at it, could be 4 or 5 times higher than what you would have seen maybe 10 years back or 20 years back. That is actually the function of inflation. That's a function of money supply growth. That's also a function of population. That's also a function of the behavior that come from every consumer in the country. Therefore, they all drive the prices up or down. And finally, demand supply situation also makes the prices move up and down. In such a scenario, clearly the complexity of managing money or maybe utilizing the money in a manner that can provide return becomes very, very important to understand. So that's why I mentioned about VUCA world. The complexity remains very, very large. In such a scenario, clearly the opportunity keeps growing. Being in the mutual fund industries, people used to ask me about 10 years back, somebody asked me a question that whether the mutual fund industry would become 32 lakh crore size. Probably I would have said probably yes, with some element of doubt in my mind. And clearly, if you look back, I think 32 lakh crores is actually is not something a small amount, but still we are talking about the 30 lakh crore becoming 100 trillion rupees. That's something again with 1 trillion rupee is also being talked about. Is because of the capital market that's getting developed, understanding of financial market getting increased as the day progress, as the year progress. Therefore, more and more money coming into the capital market as part of the financial savings is something will make the industry become larger and larger and become a way of investing through the mutual funds will become is a way of thinking for every investor in the country. That's what I see. The way every savers in the country know about fixed deposit, the mutual funds also becoming the way I think everyone considers fixed deposit as part of their day-to-day investment options. The mutual fund also gaining more and more prominence. That's something that makes me believe the financial market would continue to keep growing and mutual fund will continue to play a very large role both for serving the interest of capital market development on one side by way of investing of the money that has been pooled by all of you or maybe the investors at large into development of the bond market, into development of the equity market, providing money to companies who needs equity money, providing monies to companies who needs to borrow for the purpose of building business. That remains. That therefore, in the financial intermediation, the banks, the insurance companies, and the mutual funds now are also becoming a large institution to provide the capital for the development of the market. At the same time, from the customer point of view, naturally the option for them to consider while making their investments that they are surplus, that money is there, definitely the investment of that money has to also happen, moving away from fixed deposit and look at various other options that could be available in front of them for them to generate return. So return generation, we can always ignore it, saying I'm not greedy, I don't want to generate return, I'm okay with my capital investment. But at the same time, one also cannot forget the fact that every year inflation goes up by 4 or 5%. I think we must earn something to beat the inflation because cost increase at the end of the day eats into the money of the investors. Therefore, the money is not appropriately deployed for them to generate sufficient return on the investment. Naturally, however huge money one may have, they may probably end up discovering that the money has disappeared in value only because of, not because you have spent the money, only because of increase in cost is ultimately to the money. Therefore, deploying the money also will become equally important on the other side. And that's why we believe that the mutual fund as an animal or maybe mutual fund as an institution is something has been serving the various needs of the investors despite knowing the fact that what is the direction of the market at all point of time. The direction of the market can at least be easier said than done. And given the fact that volatility, uncertainty, the complexity and ambiguity also has got a greater influence in the market where it makes it up and down at all point of time. And at the same time, it continues to remain on a high growth trajectory for benefiting, for giving benefit to the investors in the long run. Therefore, somebody would even ask a question about the index, maybe about 20 years back, when the index was maybe about 6,000 or 7,000 index, whether it will go to about 40,000. Not many would have believed that it will go to about 44,000 index, or not many even would have said that it will go to 44,000 index. The number of people would have probably predicted it will go to about 44,000 index would be very, very small in number. So they'll probably would have remained a minority, and a majority of the people would have remained unknown as to what could happen. And that's the reality of the market. There are many times we deal with unknowns. Many times we deal with things as if it's known. And believe me, both the stuff, whether it's unknown or unknown, not necessarily they will give the right results as we expect them to deliver in the short run. At the same time, and solve such unknowns and known clearly, in the long run benefits investors just by sheer passion or maybe the holding power they bring on the table to stay invested on course during all the ups and downs, and with the confidence and faith that yes, in the long run, the market will do well, the economy will do very well. The short run, of course, we all will go through a pain period. That's something one has to learn to live with that. That's something which has been learned in the financial market for so many number of years. And why I'm specifically saying this is that we all have the ability to some extent analyze and try to make a prediction as to what could happen. And believe me, all such predictions only come true only to the extent of about 60 to 68%. You may still go wrong about 30-35% on those predictions. At the end of the day, for the same such predictions, as you may one is able to give, more time, I call it as a long rope one is able to give. Clearly, I think the expectation of investors can also be met in the financial market to meet the varying needs. The other factor is also becoming complex. There used to be a period where all of us have gone through high interest rate regime. Whichever bank you go, the banks used to take money at a reasonably good rate of interest, including non-bank financial service companies to offer good rate of interest. Clearly, the pandemic has made the most of the central bank across the world to print money so that the government can actually take the money and spend money in the hands of people so that they can boost the consumption across the world. And therefore, the printing of money by most of the central banks have now become a normal. It has become the way of actually boosting the economy. In such a scenario, naturally, the financial market have got two types of money. The money which is available, which can take a risk towards investing in equity, that has gone up. At the same time, the not able to generate sufficient return in the fixed deposits or any other fixed income instruments, the need for looking at other alternate investment for them to generate return also becoming more and more prominent. So this is a peculiar world in which we live. In such a scenario, definitely, I think the uncertainty for investors remains very, very high. This doesn't happen only in India, it's happened everywhere in the world. Therefore, in such a scenario, I think what could make eventually the investors in the long run do better is having a discipline of investing in the market through the mutual funds or any other capital market related entities, invest in a systematic manner. That time, my own belief is mutual funds have been doing a great service by making people aware that investing in the mutual fund ultimately benefits every individuals or every household to meet their longer term goal needs that each one of them may have without getting worried about the fluctuations that we all go through both in life as well as in the capital market. That's something is I believe that mutual fund will be able to provide a platform for the growing needs of the customers. In such a scenario, definitely the financial market would play a bigger role. But as I mentioned earlier, the financial market being the proxy of the economy, a greater attention, regulatory framework, regulatory intervention, and a greater attention coming from the government of India in providing a finance to the varying needs of people, varying needs of sectors, and ensure the interest rates are actually charged in such a manner the companies are able to actually borrow and make money, at the same time provide a greater service or goods to the consumers. If this kind of rotation, if it remains, an orderly intervention, if it also comes in from the financial regulator, as well as the capital market regulator, as well as the respective government of India, various schemes, I am sure the financial market will remain more healthy. As the financial market remains healthy, naturally the economic growth would become probably on a higher growth trajectory. And India being one of the country being considered as the best country in the world, especially at a time where the China regulatory intervention or crackdowns, which clamped down rather, I would say, is also now making people realize what are the other best countries that one can look at as alternate to China. Is also something India is becoming more and more prominent. Therefore, the higher linkages with the financial market worldwide and the more and more integration of the financial market within India and the global market with more and more money coming in from foreign institutional investors, look at India as a great opportunity. And such a great linkages would only make the broader economic growth to become real and capital market growth to become real. The need of money to get deployed in the capital market on a continuous basis would again will become real. The market will become only large and large in the whole space. The naturally disruption is something is now coming and hitting in every sectors and every economy. Therefore, how each one of us are also looking at the change for building our business for the future is something will remain constant. Disruption is something one cannot avoid. But the question is how we are able to prepare ourselves for such disruption by offering a product which are innovative product, which could be more customer-centric product, which are products that are driven by the cost, such as the passive funds. All such things will come as part and parcel of the whole product offering, taking into account the change in the world, taking into account the customer preferences, also taking into account the need for building the business for the future, given the fact that future opportunity remains very, very large. I think this will remain as a core area of focus for every player in the market, not just only mutual fund. Every player in the market will look at the customer convenience and also disruption that happens along the way due to the technology. I think this will be one of a big focus area for all of us in building the future of the financial services business. And we at Aditya Birla Mutual Fund remain extremely committed in this area of great opportunity to serve the large pool of customer needs, which already been doing it for the last almost 27 years. And then we continue to remain committed in the financial market development as a leader in the industry, and at the same time continue to service large growing needs of the investors who want to invest in the capital market by offering differentiated product. That's something, and also focus on creating more and more awareness for investing in capital market and investing in mutual funds will remain one of the key area of focus for Aditya Birla Mutual Fund. We believe serving customers, creating awareness about financial market and making people understand the VUCA world, and in that how they should go about making investment remains a key area of focus, and serving customers' needs on these lines we feel is extremely important given the fact that the longer term outlook for the financial market, given the fact that the proxy of the economy remains very, very large and will be one of the large driver from the economic growth point of view. I think we remain committed in these endeavors. I am again to just conclude from an investor's point of view, clearly on this kind of world, and what makes the investors to become successful in the long run is the discipline of investing at all point of time, and especially uncertain time they provide also greater opportunity. Therefore, that discipline is something which I think will make it work. And today's sessions that we have planned, that my colleagues have been rolled out, is actually with that intention, provide a greater service, greater awareness about investing in financial market is something. It remains one of our top agenda. I'm happy I'm part of this session today. I'm sure the rest of the sessions will go great in terms of with the various panel discussion and various discussion debate that will be there. I'm sure each one of you will be the large beneficiary of this. With this, I would like to thank H Media, Gautam Srinivasan, and also my other colleagues for making this possible on the day, just 2 days before the Independence Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bala Subramanian. That's the keynote address here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh, and a very important message, that is that knowledge is your power in conquering the unknown in this VUCA world. And if you have the discipline and if you have the diligence, you can make it your way in this financial world. Thank you so much for that address, Mr. Bala Subramanian. Wise words indeed from almost 3 decades of your experience in the markets. And well, indeed, the topic of financial management has gained a new sense of urgency, especially since the outbreak of the pandemic, where active measures taken earlier to secure one's financial independence provided the strongest buffer buffer for those who were prepared against unforeseen circumstances. Now, any repeat of such a crisis can severely cripple income streams. The need, therefore, is to create a long-term investment plan that diligently channels personal savings in service of meeting goals and securing your future against wealth erosion. Financial independence today can, of course, mean different things to different age groups. For some, it's about growth. For others, it's about security. Now, considering the ever-expanding universe of financial tools and products available for investors, it's time to bring in the experts to understand the nuances around managing money. So let's begin the first in a series of discussions and fireside chats here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh 2021 with a panel on reimagining retirement. Indeed, that plate should be coming up soon, so you Indeed, retirement is the beginning of an open highway of experiences where you want to enjoy life on your terms with a stable income. But gone are the days, I guess, when investments in traditional investment instruments would be considered sufficient for sailing through retirement. Of course, today's post-retirement income needs of around 45,000 rupees per month could go up to 3 lakh rupees per month in 30 years if inflation keeps up around 6 to 6.5% levels, according to some experts. So to reach that level of monthly income, one needs a smart calibration of investment instruments in a progressive and time-bound manner. So let's understand more about the nuances at play in this fast-changing world of investments, especially in service of one of the most important goals for investments, and that is retirement. Now, joining me on the panel to explain all of this are Dhirendra Kumar, founder and chief executive of Value Research, Loai Navlaki, who's the managing director and CEO at International Money Matter Private Limited, Bhavdeep Bhatt, head of retail sales at Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC, and Shashi Krishnan, CEO of the National Pension System Trust. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh. Our first panel is on reimagining retirement, which is, as I mentioned, it's one of the most important goals for investors as they plan their financials. So let's start this panel discussion with a view from you, Dhirendra. In what way has the gamut of investing for retirement itself changed in recent years, in your opinion? You've been watching this space for a long time. You've been advising people for a long time. What's your view on how the world itself is changing for retirement when it comes to investment?
Two fundamental change, which radically alters the way people look at retirement. One is the longevity. People, the way people are going to live longer. That will be in for surprise. It looks like a very normal thing, if you're going to live for 90 years rather than 75. Then your post-retirement life is going to be double, twice as much as I'm just saying an example, and that is it's steadily going up. The other is the healthcare cost and the general inflation, the cost of living. This is so with the inflation is actually altering in a different way as well. The interest rate, the way people have been used to, so that radically alters the way people look at investment, look at retirement. The old way, where interest rates were high and everybody was able to, wriggle through, without any planning, without much of a planning, you could save, accumulate, and seemingly get a reasonable return. And that was good enough. Now that will not be good enough because interest rates will be low. And a risk aversion of that kind will not help. So one has to completely take a new way of looking at retirement, your accumulation phase. And I don't think those changes are forthcoming.
All right, Lavai, striking the right balance between investing for retirement and for other goals can be tricky. So, how can investors maintain that balance?
So I think what happens is that investors tend to think sequentially. They look at things which are coming up immediate and want to plan for that. The other thing they tend to plan more for is things where there are lump sum goals. So where I need a large chunk of money, that's where people tend to also start planning. But on a continuous drip, which typically what is going to happen in retirement, is not something that people are ready for. They sometimes tend to push this behind. So the questions I think that one needs to ask oneself in terms of planning for goals and therefore giving the importance to retirement is that is there something is this goal something that you can borrow against or not? Is this something that you can postpone or not? Is it something that you can downplay or under sort of size and spend little less on or not? And I think those questions will probably give you the importance of retirement, that it's something that you cannot borrow against, and therefore it is a priority for investors. So if you plan this, then and the important thing I think from also what Dhirendra mentioned is that the earlier you start planning for retirement, the more time you have to plan for it. And of course, doing a very detailed sort of assumptions and having them right in terms of life expectancy, inflation, rate of return is all very important.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest factor there. You need time on your side. Sashi, coming to you, what's your opinion on the biggest mistake folks make when it comes to investing for retirement?
Yeah, sure. You're calling this session reimagining retirement. I think the biggest problem is most of us haven't even imagined retirement. So where is this reimagining coming from? I think the biggest problem is that people just don't have a plan for saving for their retirement or investing for their retirement. Benjamin Franklin actually said that if you fail to plan, you're actually planning to fail. I mean, he's credited to have said that. I believe you can check that out. So I think it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that most of the people who are on this session today don't have a specific plan for retirement. Right? That's my sense. I would say almost 70% of the people wouldn't have a specific plan for retirement. So if you need to address this problem, I think the question that you need to ask yourself is, why don't you have a specific plan for retirement? And I believe there are two reasons for this. I mean, the first reason is, it's extremely difficult for you to imagine your future self. There is this constant battle between your present self and your future self, and invariably, it is your present self that wins this battle. I've talked to a large number of my younger colleagues, my younger friends, and I asked them, why is it that you don't have a specific plan for retirement? And the answer I get is a long list of EMIs. Gaadi ka EMI dena hai, ghar ka EMI dena hai, retirement to bahut dur hai. So why have a specific plan? So I think behavioral scientists, call this present bias, but to, cut the jargon, it is simply that, all of us are looking for immediate gratification, and therefore, why have a specific retirement plan? And the second dimension is what I called our default setting. I mean, our default setting is, believe me or not, to do nothing. And therefore, we are all sort of prone to say that, why sit down and, write a specific plan for retirement? There's enough time for us to do it. So when I again ask my colleagues, what is it that's stopping you from doing it? How do I get you out of this default setting? They got a large number of issues. They come up with issues like, I don't know how much to save for retirement. Well, it is issue. I mean, Ravai and Dhirendra should think about it. You need to give this guy a specific goal. Because if he doesn't have a number, it doesn't get him to get out of the inertia. I think we seriously need to put that together in place. The other, is that, people say it's too complicated. But believe me, all it needs is common sense. And I think we need to demystify this space and say it isn't complicated. All it needs is common sense, a little bit of patience, and a lot of self-care. Of course, you have that, extreme end, the eternal optimists who say, why do I need to have a specific retirement plan? I anyway go and buy a lottery every week.
Indeed, and that's where the question comes for either there's one sort of the population. The problem is A, there is a goal setting issue. Whether they have that goal in mind. B, do they have a figure in mind? C, have they imagined itself how their retirement is going to look like? And what are the costs going to be involved in terms of having that upkeep when it comes to the retirement phase and planning accordingly, and therefore planning your investment structure. So a lot of questions that folks themselves need to sit down with themselves and ask and answer. So that's a good starting point to start the conversation there. Thank you, Sashi. We'll come to you, Bhavdeep. How should investment strategies for retirement change as one inches closer to retirement? Broadly, how do things start and how do things change as you head closer?
Yeah, thank you, Gautam, for that question. And good morning, everyone. I think the first thing is every individual's financial condition and financial situation is different and unique, and therefore the approach that one needs to take towards retirement planning or the goal fulfillment is different. But broadly speaking, as you kind of approach your retirement age, the risk appetite of an investor typically goes down, and therefore the allocation towards risk assets, which was there during the earlier part of working career or the middle part of working career, compared to that, the investment portfolio needs to be more conservative than before. But as I think Dhirendra alluded to, the longevity of life, for example, is or the life expectancy itself has really gone up over the last few decades, and that has profound implications in terms of the need for money for individuals. So she also talked about the fact that the inflation is one factor one really has to kind of keep in mind. For example, I mean, we all keep talking about compounding in the world of investment. So inflation, if you like, is the compound anti-growth kind of phenomena where it really eats into the value of money. So one has to really take into account a few factors. One, the broadly speaking, the allocation towards risk asset has to go down. At the same time, there has to be some allocation towards risk assets, because growth is equally important in the portfolio value to kind of counter the inflation bit. So that's the broad view I would like to share at this point.
All right, Dhirendra, coming back to you, in terms of say the expanding universe of investment products, what new options have emerged to become highly suited for the goal of retirement? If you could outline all the options available for those who are watching to understand how that world has changed in terms of product offerings.
Plenty of things. For example, NPS is something which has emerged in the last 8-10 years. It is targeted to your retirement. And the likable thing about NPS is that you have a control on the allocation. On top of it, the forced, NPS forces you to not take your money out. That I think is a huge, that's a big advantage, because the temptation is to access that money. It is enforcing a discipline. That's one. That apart, I think accumulating for your retirement is a very dull and boring thing, and it should be like that. All you need to do is you have to start believing in equity. That is important, because that's the only thing which will help you beat inflation, or at least match inflation. Fixed income will not. So in your initial phases, have as much equity as possible, have time on your side, start early. But more importantly, doing these things is one part. It is all about all the interesting things that has come up in life, come up in our world. You have to really avoid. It is important to not block all your lot of investment in investment linked insurance, or cryptocurrency, or getting excited about something. It is one has to be very focused and disciplined about your retirement savings, or any saving for that matter. If you just want to have, none of the plans will work out. I'm telling you, because we can't visualize the world 30 years from now, 40 years from now. But what you can definitely plan for is having little more than enough, as much as you can. And that does not require too many ideas. It requires, keeping it simple, reducing the options, keeping away from the nonsense.
Keep it simple. That always works as an ideology when it comes to everything in life, including investments. But coming to you, Lavai, the pandemic did indeed deal a heavy financial blow to many people, and they may have had to stall their plan for investing for retirement. So, what's your advice for them?
So I think one has to be, ready with making a plan early. And if you do plan early, it's not that life will run as per the plan because life does happen, but the plan will provide for some action to be taken or some provision for contingencies. And I think that's a very, very crucial impact that one needs to take into account. After you have done that, I think if you have already done that, I think that helps. You'll be able to get over this sort of storm. And while you may not have had more money to invest, maybe you lost your job or you had a reduction in your salary if you were accumulating for retirement. But the investments that you have made have performed quite well in this last year and a half or so. So, to that extent, there has been something which has compensated for what you might have lost. But I think the most important thing is that you must recognize that the period of retirement, since we are speaking of a long period now, life expectancy increasing is one definite factor. In fact, when we do plans, we used to take into account that people might live till the age of 65 or 70 about 2 decades ago. And now we look at 100 as the age. So 100 is the age to which we need to plan. So you know that it's going to be a long period in retirement. It's also the time where, as Shashi mentioned, you're talking about reimagining retirement. The whole way retirement is happening compared to, let's say, 2 decades ago is different. People retired at 58 and then they said, okay, now, I'm going to sit at home. Today there is a lot of options that people have, and a lot of people do think about it and say, okay, when I retire, I'm really going to do the things that I love to do or I want to do, the impact that I'm going to make on others, etc. So you must have money on your side. So recognize that and realize that there is an up and down, so it's not all going to be a straight line. If it was all going to be a straight line, what's the fun? We'll never have a show like this, right?
And what would you say to those who want to retire early? Because that's an emerging trend where people say, you know what, it's not 60 or 65. I want to retire at 50 or 55. What would you say to them?
So I think a lot of people think that retiring early means, sit on the beach, look at the yachts going by and, chill. And there's enough scientific evidence to show that bucket lists are completed in about 18 to 24 months. So the question I ask them is, okay, you're going to retire at 40 or 45, and then what? For 2 years, you will do all of these things that you really wanted to do. Then you have to try and make yourself uh, both socially, mentally, professionally relevant, right? And keep yourself busy. So as long as you have a passion for something, and then you have enough funds to back it. Let's say I want to do a lot of work in the social field when I don't expect to earn, but I've built a corpus. That's fine. According to me, that's not retirement. That's really, as they say in the West, refirement, right? That's where you're igniting yourself to doing something that you really are passionate about. So
It's
I think
life 2.0.
yes, absolutely, or whatever 5.0. With pandemic having come 2 3 times already.
Indeed. Let me get in Sashi. Sashi, there are salaried folks and then there are self-employed folks. What are the things that self-employed people should keep in mind when planning for retirement, since the gig economy is rising in terms of stature and covering more people? So for those who are self-employed, what do you think they should keep in mind when planning for retirement?
First of all, they should do everything that Virender and Lavai said. So there is no doubt about that. Let's look at it objectively. And what is the difference between a self-employed guy and a guy like us, a traditional guy who gets a salary at the end of the day? The self-employed guy knows that he's not going to get a paycheck at the end of the month, right? So I mean that changes the way he thinks, and that's, I think, the most important thing. I've had extensive discussions with a lot of these self-employed guys, lawyers, doctors, tech consultants, name them. And there are two personality traits that I see in most of these people. And the first is the belief that their practice will only get better. Good times or bad times, the practice will keep getting better. And therefore, there is enough time on their side to save for retirement. Because tomorrow will be a better day and next month will be a better month and I will earn more, and therefore that would be the best time to start for planning for retirement. And that, I think, is one of the personality traits that nearly all of them have. And the second thing I think is that nearly all of them believe that time is not against them. Like Lawai was saying, everybody believes that it's going to be 100-year life, including the financial advisors like Dhirendra and Lawai. And if it's going to be 100 years life, self-employed guys have this belief that I've got a lot of time on my side to invest. I can start at 50, 60 because I'm going to work till 100. So I think, given those two personality traits, I think there are a couple of suggestions that I would have to self-employed, and I presume there are a large number of them out here, Gautam, who are self-employed. The first is, find some, me time to sit back and say, let me look at my personal finances as opposed to my, business finances or whatever it is. Very few of them actually, take out me time. The second is, please set up an automatic payment route into your retirement accounts. We at the NPS have it, the PPF has it, the mutual funds have it. But if you set up an automatic payment route, you tend to address a lot of these problems. But when you're setting it, be very careful about a couple of things. One is, don't set the bar too high. I mean, if you say I'm going to put in, 25% of what I earned this month or whatever you use, sometimes the bar is so high that you tend to sort of drop out. So set the bar at a reasonable level and just let it remain out there. And if you set up that automatic payment route, technology, as Badi was saying, is there today. You can sort of keep putting in money through your bank accounts, DRemit, whatever. The third thing is, I think, build in discipline to say that when I've got windfall, I will put in at least 25% of that into my retirement account. Very few people do that because when they get a windfall, what they go and do is buy a Mercedes, especially self-employed guys. So if you don't do that, possibly you will get closer to, planning for retirement. And, as both Dhirendra and was saying, if you ring fence your retirement savings, don't use it for other things. I think you're halfway there. And I think lastly, on a much lighter note, for all those macho self-employed males who are here, if you can't do it, please ask your wife to do it. I'm sure she'll do it better than you.
Let's see how many take your advice to heart. But again, it's very important, as you mentioned, to delineate the line between expense and investment. I mean, you get a windfall, make sure it's also invested into your future rather than spending it all into your present. Bhavdeep, coming to you, you mentioned that, as investors grow older, they become more conservative. So in terms of investment strategies, how do things change once they cross the threshold of retirement, considering now we have such a wide expanse of investment options? Once, say, you cross the threshold of retirement, how do investment strategies themselves change?
Sure, Gautam. So there are basically quite a few strategies, but let me outline two of them. One is the bucket strategy. Essentially, just like any conventional financial planning tool would suggest, that identify your short-term, medium-term, and long-term needs, and accordingly, you kind of allocate your assets with a combination of conservative, asset class like fixed income deposits and debt mutual funds and equities in different proportions for your short-term, medium-term, and long-term needs. And I think this is more relevant for people who have good enough corpus and, as they call, teenagers, essentially senior citizens who want to live like teenagers. So I think that set of people or the community would find it, and particularly if you have good enough corpus, you started your careers with some hardships in 70s or 80s, and you have kind of been able to build a good enough corpus, and if your corpus is good enough to outlive you for 100 years provision, inflation adjusted and medical expense cost adjusted, then this is the bucket approach one could look at. Alternate approach is kind of invest in asset allocation products, for mutual funds, for example, including product categories like balanced advantage fund or some of the other asset allocation funds, and keep withdrawing from systematically. So there is a facility called systematic withdrawal plan, and there is I'm sure many of you would be aware, there is a thumb rule of 4%. essentially, as long as you kind of withdraw 4% of your corpus, that's fine. I think that can kind of provide you for, I think there is a calculation about 87, 88 years. And as Dhirendra mentioned, I think we are living in an environment where the interest rates are low and expected to remain at a lower end for many, many years to come, with so many structural changes in the economy. And with that in mind, one could kind of look at 3 to 4% of withdrawal every month. So these are the broadly two strategies I would like to sort of highlight. Also, the fact that because if you are healthy, for example, and you have inclination and situation permitting, one could also look at part-time work. I think that's another trend that we are seeing. People don't retire so early. So that's another approach. And lastly, I mean, the one peripheral approach is the which is not still very popular, but very significant in Western world is the annuities, buying into annuities from insurance companies. So these are some of the approaches, one investment strategies one can adopt post retirement, given the individual situation.
All right, we're at the top of the hour, so let's go around the table one last time to check, if investors should take one key message away from this discussion, what should that be? So let me get a view from each one of you, starting with you, Sashi.
Yeah, I think investors, the key message that investors should take, and I think somebody said this earlier in the show, that for anything that you want to do in life, there is somebody who's willing to give you a loan, except for retirement. And therefore, I mean, it is only up to you to plan for retirement. Nobody else can do it to you. Nobody will give you a loan to retire. And therefore, I think you please get on the top of it and start right now.
All right, Bhavdeep, what's your take on the one key message folks should take away from this discussion?
Yeah, I think imagine the retirement. Let's start with that, and then keep reimagining every few years, given the individual requirements. So start planning for it. It's a lot more serious than what kind of is taken as. So I think, yeah, start planning early.
Start planning early. Lava, your summary statement in terms of the key message for investors, what would that be?
It's going to be a biased message. I don't think you can do it yourself. You need to get yourself a really good financial advisor. And more so because, it so happens that one member of the family is very well versed with the financial decisions, but the other family member who might outsurvive that person may not be. And therefore, getting into a relationship with an advisor early on might help smoothen the path for their families as well.
All right. And the final note from you, Dhirendra, the key message for investors, what do you have for them?
I would say that, start somehow early. The temptation or investment is postponed consumption, and there's just too many things. And people will not experience, and compounding is magic. That will be appreciated, or that will be followed or appreciated only after you have done something. Even if whether you have to start with 500 rupees for 12 months, the rest of the things will be taken care of. Falling in habit. So because for any plan, any financial plan, money is the raw material. So if you don't save and you don't put it to work, nothing will work out. So somehow start early and get going.
All right, start early and make your money work for you. That's the message that I would take away from this discussion. But it is time to wrap up this first conversation here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh on reimagining retirement. I'd like to thank all of the panelists for sharing their thoughts and insights on the topic, and of course also to our viewers for joining us in this session. Stay tuned, lots more coming up in the next segment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You work hard your entire life to try and give your loved ones the best possible life, from an excellent education to great life experiences. And you have done a great job. But as a loving father, mother, son, daughter, brother or sister, have you planned for the unexpected? Have you created a roadmap of your wishes? Have you written a will? If you haven't, it's time. We are living in scary
Well, from reimagining retirement, we now shift focus to navigating volatility in the equity markets here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh 2021. Our next segment is a fireside chat with Mahesh Patil, Chief Investment Officer at Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC. Now, considering large parts of the economy have shuttled in and out of lockdown restrictions in the recent past, markets have been witnessing swings of unprecedented magnitude from record highs to record lows. So, for many investors, existing or new ones, dealing with market volatility can seem daunting, especially when it comes to staying invested and following a financial plan. So, Mahesh is our expert navigator who will show you the right way to pass these choppy waters of financial markets. Mahesh, thank you so much for joining us at the Nivesh Mahakumbh. Now, as they say, adversity can present opportunities. So how can investors benefit from periods of market volatility? What's your view on that?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the show. So you're right. I think especially equity markets, as you know, I mean, it's never a one-way journey, right? We all know that equities over the long term have given good returns. If you look at the long-term returns of equity, they'll be somewhere around 12 to 13% last 10 years, 15 years return. But it's not always linear, right? There are periods, if you look at in a calendar year, the market would have given as high as around 40, 50% return. And it could be down as much as around 30, 35% in a calendar year. So, so the volatility in the market is, it's the characteristics of equity markets. And it's also one of the risks associated with that. But as you rightly said, any adversity can also be an advantage. So whenever markets, normally when you invest into a market, you want to buy something which is more attractive, right? In terms of valuation, or which is a stock, for example, which is available below its intrinsic value. I think during periods of market volatility, okay, when there is fear and we see deep market corrections, like what we saw last year during the pandemic, right? The markets corrected by almost like 35, 40% or so. That's the time you really get stocks, good quality stocks, which you wanted to buy, which were expensive and out of one's domain or out of one's framework. Okay, one can buy those at a much attractive valuation. So, so if you are able to, not exactly time, but during adversity, when there is fear in the market, when everybody wants to sell and get out, that's the time if you are able to really have the courage to invest in the market or probably do a larger allocation. Then whatever the average returns the market have given, you can possibly tend to get returns slightly better than that. So it's place to play a bit contra, I would say, and play against the market. I think if you do that, that can potentially give you better return than the average returns which one could expect.
All right. But Mahesh, given the current volatility, is it a good time for new investors to enter the market now? And if yes, what are the things that they should keep in mind? And if no, then how should they decipher when to start investing in equities?
So the market, actually, if you look at in the last 1 year or so, it's been a one-way market, right? There hasn't been much of volatility in the market. And that is something which I think especially new investors should keep in mind, that it's not going to be a one-way street. There could be periods of market corrections. There could be periods of market consolidation. And even in a bullish market, we've seen markets correcting by around 20, 25%, which should not be a surprise. But investors looking to invest in the market at this point in time, considering the fact that the market is at an all-time high, is rallied significantly in the last 1 year, and the valuations are apparently looking very high compared to the long-term averages. But I would still say that for long-term investors, okay, investing with a investment horizon of more than 3 years, I think they should still continue to invest even at these levels, because you never know, right, when the market will top out. So, see, fundamentally, the market is actually coming out from a bottom phase, right? We've seen a deep correction in the economy, and slowly as the COVID pandemic, okay, is settling down, as we're seeing vaccination now coming through, I think we should come out of this phase, despite the whatever second wave and third wave what we're looking at. And our belief is that the economic recovery should pan out over the next 1 year, and it should gather momentum going forward. And on the back of that, you should see the corporate earnings growth starting to do better. In fact, this year, we are looking at around 30-35% growth in the Nifty earnings. So while the market is already at high and discounting to a large extent, I think the recovery in the economy and in the earnings, corporate earnings over the next few years will continue to take the market higher. And I think the market is set to gain higher ground even from here. So the first time novice investor, I think, since the market is already at a higher level, it's not exactly cheap. It would be advisable for them to invest into funds or stocks which are relatively less risky, I would say, or funds, which are less risky, or it could also be a kind of a large cap fund. It could be a fund which they can choose, or it could be a balance advantage kind of fund, right, where the equity allocation in that fund is decided by the fund manager, depending on the market valuation and the market cycle where we are in. So I think those would be the entry products, which a first-time novice investor who wants to invest in the market at this point in can choose. But I think clearly, one need not be aggressive at this point in time because where the market is. But clearly, one should start investing if one has already not done that. I would advise even the current level of market is good enough. And from here also, one can expect reasonably good returns from market over a medium to long-term horizon.
All right. But in the context of the market going up on the back of higher earnings, what are your suggestions when the volatility phase still exists for investors with equity heavy portfolios who are worried, the markets keep going up, that's great, but they just worry, where is the end coming? So in the context of what you said, that markets will grow on the back of higher earnings, for those investors with equity heavy portfolios, what's your message to them?
So I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, the market valuations are on the higher side, right? So, but it would be prudent for people who have equity heavy portfolios and seen a significant appreciation of that, right? In the last 1 year, we've seen the markets almost double from the bottom, and the equity allocation in one's portfolio overall would have gone up significantly. So in that context, I think it would be advisable to rebalance the portfolio and try to bring that equity allocation somewhere near one's target allocation, right? Everybody would have a target allocation for various asset class, including equity, depending on one's risk profile and one's investment horizon. So for example, one's target equity allocation is say 60%, right? Which is the average allocation which one like to maintain. And because of the market appreciation, if that has gone to around 80%, then clearly I would advise that at these market levels to bring it somewhere closer to that target allocation, and but continue to stay invested over there. At the same time, a portfolio would be a mix of various kind of funds or various kind of stocks which would be there. At these levels, it is advisable to probably cut the amount of risk in the portfolio. So some of the high risk funds or highly volatile funds or high risk stocks or high momentum stocks, one can actually reduce that composition in one's portfolio and move that towards more quality stocks or much more secular stocks or defensive stocks. I think that would be the right strategy at this point in time. At the same time, one should continue to maintain an equity allocation which is at least equal to your target allocation or slightly higher. It's not a time to really bring down one's equity allocation. I think there is enough room for the market to move up in the next coming years.
All right. Speaking of rebalancing portfolios, could there be a tendency to go overboard because you keep tweaking to check if something works or not? What are some of the things, in your opinion, that investors should keep in mind, specifically when rebalancing portfolios during periods of volatility?
Yeah, so rebalancing is very, very important, and that's something which we always continue to emphasize on as a part of asset allocation. And normally, one would have a kind of a fixed time frame, right, where one would want to rebalance the portfolio, say once in 6 months or once in a year, where you would review and see how the allocations have moved across the various asset classes. It could be equity, it could be debt, it could be gold, it could be commodities, it could be real estate, and then take a call on that. But during periods of higher volatility, where the swings in the market could be much larger, especially on the equity side, there I think it would be prudent to actually set some kind of some kind of a target, right? In the sense that if the allocation of equity goes say 25% higher than your target allocation, okay, then one can set a trigger, okay, to rebalance the portfolio earlier than the normal stipulated time frame which one would have normally done to rebalance the portfolio. So in that sense, if it reaches a particular target allocation, which is above the normal target, then one can do it much earlier. And I think that is something which I think I would advise specifically, especially during times of market volatility. It applies to both when the market is going up and at the same time when there is a deep correction in the market.
All right, Mahesh, and as we sum up this chat, Mr. Balasubramanian called today's world the VUCA world. So, what are the things that you would advise investors to watch out for during periods of volatility as your summary statement for this chat?
So I think especially for people who are first-time investors and investing in the market for the first time, and we've seen that in the last 1 year, there are a lot of millennials and new young people who have entered in the market, and that's reflected in the large increase in the demat accounts, okay, which is the last 1 year itself, we added more than what we did in the last 10 years. So these investors haven't seen volatility, as I said earlier. They have seen a one-way rally in the market, and markets has been very kind in that sense. And everything has gone back up in the market in the last 1 year, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I would say. And that's where I think one needs to be careful, because in a bullish market and the kind of euphoria what we're seeing at this point in time, everything goes up, even the poor quality stocks goes up. That's where one should be careful and staying away from that. This is the time to be slightly much more discerning and much more careful in terms of the stock selection, or in terms of the quality of the stocks, the companies which are much more stable, where earnings visibility is high. That's what we are doing. And for investors who are investing into funds, I would say that try to look at funds, okay, which are less risky, because each fund has a particular risk return trade-off which is there, right? And each fund is also classified as based on their risk or volatility. I think at this point in time, I would say that it's better to reduce the risk and of one's portfolio, and to that extent, invest into funds, stocks, okay, which are less volatile or less riskier. And there are many funds, okay. If you look at in our portfolio, there are plethora of funds and category of funds. Taking the right advice from your investment advisor and looking for funds, okay, which offer much more stability at this point in time, I think would be very important in this environment. Because I think from here on, if you're able to get a reasonably good return, I think in line with the long-term average returns, 10 to 12% return in equities would be a good return. Don't chase high returns, what one has seen in the last 1 year, because those only come in, when there has been such deep corrections. So more steady returns and moderate returns, I think, is what one should be targeting, and accordingly, one should choose stocks and funds, okay, which fit that. I think that would be the advice for investors at this point in time.
Wise counsel indeed. And as we said, volatility can be seen from the lens of opportunity rather than just risk. If you understand your investments, you stand a better chance of managing volatility. Mahesh, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh. And of course, thank you to our viewers also. Stay tuned. The next segment is coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's joined in for the Nivesh Mahakumbh today. It's fantastic to have all of you with us. It's even more fantastic to have the wealth of so much opinion as we discuss investment and investment ideas going ahead. This one is a special conversation for many reasons. But before I get into it, I want to start off with a couple of facts as they stand at this point, particularly for our country. Women in India represent about 29% of the labor force. That's down from 35% in 2009. Equally true, as a UN India report indicates, that women in India stand at about just 50% of them who own either a bank account or a savings account. In fact, more than 60% women do not have any valuable asset to their name at this point. That raises the question of what happens next. What happens next is that there is plenty of potential. According to the IMF, if women were participating in the workforce just as men would, there would be a whopping 27% increase in our GDP. A big part of that is wealth creation. It's creating the right environment for women as individuals to come forth and make decisions for themselves and to make decisions about their investments, which makes this a very special conversation because it's something I believe personally is really paramount to having equity and equality for women. We need to create an environment where we're talking about financial literacy, where we are creating financial options for women, of women, and by women. And that brings me to the crux of this conversation. How can we create a better environment for women? And what is it that they need at this point that might help them make those important investment decisions? There's three women, power-packed women, joining me to talk about that. So without further ado, let me introduce my panel to you. Pooja Baid, who's head of marketing experiences at the Coca-Cola company, joins in. Ghazal Kalra, who is a leading tech entrepreneur, and Pinky Mehta, who's CFO at the Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC Limited. Thank you, ladies. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's fantastic to see this very vibrant panel. I put some of the context of our conversation right up front, and I'd love to dive straight into this chat. Pooja, let me start with you, because when you talk about financial investment, there's so many reasons that come up as impediments. There's a social structure, there is historical context where women have not traditionally been allowed to make decisions. There is perhaps some hesitation in terms of the fact that the confidence in taking economic decisions has been driven down as well. What, to your mind, is the most important impediment when you're talking about women and financial decision making?
Thank you, Mitali, for having me here on this conversation and asking this question to me. In my view, this real hesitancy for women to take control of their financial matters and understand and deep dive into it really comes from how we bring up our children. Look at what we teach our children when we're growing up. We're all, even till date, very, very conscious of sending our kids, both girls and boys, to dance classes and swimming classes and I don't know, get them to build up a lot of different kinds of skills in life. Very seldom do we think about the fact that they do need some practical understanding around financial matters. In fact, in most Indian households, finances or money matters are not even discussed in front of children. And therefore, we grow up in this very isolated sort of an environment where we possibly believe that money takes birth in the pocket of my father. And just comes in like that and just multiplies like that, and all you get to do is spend it. And I think that's where really the root of the lack of financial confidence or the lack of financial literacy really happens. Things change a bit as you grow up for boys because they start commanding a higher agency as time goes by and as they start stepping out in the world. Typically, the delegation of responsibility in households is also very, very linear in nature, right? The outside world, the financial matters are really delegated to the men of the household and the women of the household. You also grow up seeing your parents like that. You grow up seeing your mother take decisions around what vegetables will come, but you grow up seeing your father take decisions around where will you invest. And when you start seeing that, you start imbibing that really deep down in two formats. One, you obviously have no education around finances and financial literacy is really low, but also deep down your confidence is really low. You start believing, thinking that this is not your place, right? And that's possibly the biggest reason why so many professional women today also do not take their investment decisions. Like you see a working couple, and more than half of them, you'd see the financial decisions or the investment decisions are really delegated to the male partner, and the female partner has no agency around that, primarily because she is bred to believe it's not her place. And I think that's the biggest reason why we continue to have such few numbers when you look at financial independence of women. In fact, you mentioned that 50% women don't even have bank accounts. In reality, that number is going to be actually much higher because half of these accounts are going to be accounts opened in women's name by their male relatives, fathers, husbands, brothers, being operated by them. So there's a lot of disguised financial dependence also that's prevailing around. But I think the larger reason is around the way we are brought up. To add to it, I think our education system doesn't help. Till about class 10, you get no exposure to anything financial. All you read in mathematics is algebra and geometry and whatever else, which are all good things, but there is no financial education. Even beyond that, when you accountancy as a subject, all you are taught is banking laws and bank reconciliation statements, which in your day-to-day practical life, if you're not taking up chartered accountancy, you might never be able to use. The practical realities of financial planning really are not even part of our education system. And I think that just cements this whole attitude around finance not being important and then not being my place, which leads to the inequality that we see today between genders.
Sure. Ghazal, this is a great segue to get you in because as a tech entrepreneur, I'm sure you've done both. You've handled the financial chops and everything that was required in, building the nitty-gritties of a business. Do you sense that there is any change or pivot in terms of what's happening with the newer generations? And if the answer is yes, I have a follow-up question to that, which is, how are we helping the generations before us? How are we helping our mothers and our aunts who are probably at very crucial junctures in terms of making financial decisions for themselves, something they haven't been allowed to do yet? How can we help mobilize that?
Well, great question, and I was, sort of completely in alignment with what Pooja said. That a big part of it is just the way we are brought up, and there's a fair bit of education and confidence, and the role education plays in building that confidence. Coming to your question about are we seeing a change in the younger generation of women, and therefore how do we sort of support the older? I'm actually, I went in with that bias a couple of months ago, and over the last couple of weeks or so, I'd actually been seeing, this finfluencer, and just, out of curiosity, seeing the comments, who's asking what, and sometimes they have a session on, women, sort of, their watchers sort of dial in and you can see them on video. And lo and behold, like the diversity of women who were following this influencer on YouTube just amazed me. So there were 3 that were there on that show particularly. One was a housewife in Noida. Her daughter's in 12th, and she said, I had time during pandemic and I started investing. She does stock trading and has no background in sort of finance. She just, was watching TV, following this influencer and sort of starting from there. And she had questions around, which stock do I pick, and I invested. The other was this just graduated this year from Bhubaneswar. So, borrowed some money from her father and is following these channels and, has an account now and started trading. And the third person on that was somebody who was 55 to 60 years age, and again trading. And she, of course, came from a finance background, was a CA, left her job and was doing this. And I was, my own biases sort of were questioned in that I thought, oh, it's the younger generation that's getting access and getting proactive about it. I think, what the internet does, and in this case has done, is democratized access to information and influencers and knowledge around you, right? So I think it again comes back to, irrespective of what age you're in, the confidence, the ability to take control and to know your money, right? And that is a function of your education that can give confidence, or the people around you. I mean, it could be, a daughter sort of, making her mom feel confident that she can and she should take care of the money. So to your question, how do we help particularly in that age group, women who may not be that confident, I think be the change. I'd say that if I can change the mindset of at least 5 women around me about money and taking it in control and build that community along with confidence, that's how change is going to come in this time.
No, I completely agree with you. And, we've had so many conversations about this, Ghazal. And when people ask, what can I do? I always say, start from what's happening at home. Have a conversation with your domestic workers, with your, care workers, the women especially, on whether they have a basic bank account, whether they understand that it's a good idea to save 500 rupees and how they can do that. So I think there's no small steps here. There's only steps that take you ahead. Pinky, I want to talk a little bit about these preconceived notions as well that people seem to attach with women and investing choices. I mean, we know that India, for example, is the second largest consumer of gold, whether it's happening via investment or gold jewelry. And there tends to be this linkage always saying, oh, women want to buy gold. If you were to slice this for gender, Pinky, what is the true picture and what is the feedback you get when women come out and reach out to you and say they want to talk about investment choices?
This is a very good question. Gold for any woman, it's for a jewelry. It's not only for the jewelry, but it is a tradition. It's a sense of belongings and you passing from a generation to generation. So the earlier days, the woman used to, store the gold in the physical form. But the physical form has got many defects in the sense that you need to store it physically. Then you have a threat of the theft, then on the purity, then where to store it and all these things. So now gold, you can, the opportunity for any woman, to make an investment in the gold, you can now have a gold ETF, you can have a sovereign gold bonds, or you can invest in a gold deposit scheme. But it is not advisable, to keep all your eggs in one basket, because otherwise you may not be able to get a good return. You can't put your all investment in the only in the one basket of the gold. So there are many opportunities which are available. So everything depends upon your age. What is your source of income? What is the risk appetite? What is your requirement of the fund and your retirement plans? So the woman has to diversify the portfolio to mitigate the risk and to get the good returns. So many are available. Apart from the gold, you can invest in the mutual funds by way of a SIP, which is a regular investment. The second thing is you can invest in the PPF. Then you can take your health and life insurance. Then is a national pension schemes, which will give you a very good, the returns in your retirement. Then you can have it, you invest in your real estate. So ULIP, you can invest. So there are many options available. So according to me, putting everything in a one basket, I think it's not a right choice, and you need to diversify your portfolio and to, which mitigates the risk also and gives you a good return.
Yeah, and I wonder whether that's a message that women would not understand, Pinky, because organically women understand the management of economics. They understand the need to diversify risk and are probably far more careful about investment decisions than men would be. Pooja, let me take off from there in terms of how you think the ways of investing are different for women, because often what happens is that from the point of view of people who provide these investment options, it's a one size fits all, which it is not. Women have different aspirations, they have different needs, they have different priorities. What do you think women should keep in mind while managing their finances? What's your own top 3 or 4?
Yeah. So according to me, while
let me just quickly get Pooja's thoughts in, and then I'll hop back to you, Pinky. I'll be back to you in just a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. In fact, I was just about to take off from what Pinky ma'am just said, which is around the fact that two fundamental principles should never really be forgotten. Actually, I follow a principle called EMI, which basically stands for E is for educate. So women need to really deep educate themselves when it comes to making their financial decisions. I think a lot of times what women experience, and I've personally experienced this, is that there is this huge resistance to learning about finances. We somehow believe that we will not be able to learn it because it's so tough. It isn't. We were all born with equal level of knowledge, and then some of us learned stuff and then some of us didn't. So we need to really invest ourselves into educating ourselves. Second is M, which is for monitoring. Once you've invested, you have to stay deeply connected with your investment at a very, very regular interval to be able to identify whether it's going in the right direction, meets your aspirations and goals or not. You can't, it's not fit it, shut it, forget it. You have to stay on top of things all the time. And last but not the least is continuously investigate and identify newer opportunities. No investment tool will be constant in terms of giving you returns or in terms of meeting your objectives. As you grow, your objectives evolve, and so do tools, right? There are life stages where you need higher liquidity. Now, in those times, you cannot afford to invest in things like land, for example, and you need more liquid sources of investment. Versus there are times and there are sources of funds which you typically save for retirement, which you don't want to touch. And therefore, things, long-term plans like a PF or a land make sense at that point in time. So it's continuously very important to investigate and identify newer opportunities where you can invest and hedge your portfolio of investments depending on what your eventual life goals are. So I summarize it as EMI: educate, monitor, investigate, and identify.
Pinky,
Pooja,
did you
you
want to add
rightly
to that?
summed
What do you add to the EMI?
Yeah. So Pooja, you rightly summed up. So I would look it in the way that right now the women are quite, the educated. The days have gone, and you rightly said that even they would have a joint account, with their husband, but the husband only would you take the financial decisions only like as a name lending, to be very frank. Then there was a second phase where the women were working, but their financial decisions were taken up by the woman. Now the full economics have changed. The more and more women and the millennials like to take their own financial decisions. So according to me, if any woman wants to make a wise decision of the investment, she should be know the numbers. That what is my income source, how continuity of this income source is. Then she should know that what is my monthly expense, to be very frank. Then how much is a debt for me, whether how much is a EMI I have to pay for my car, for my credit cards, from my home loans and all these things. After that, then she should set the goals, that at least 20 or 30% of my income should be monthly as a discipline, it should go to the saving. Depending upon after setting the goals, then she should chart out that which are the kind of investment which is required by me for a saving, for my long term and short term goals and my requirement. And then she has to create an emergency funds also, because in such a volatility you cannot put your everything for the long term. So you require that if I want to draw something for emergencies, for the hospitalizations, for the medical and all these things, so at least she should be able to encash that investment, so the liquidity of the investment is also there. And lastly, she should charge for the retirement planning. Nobody would like in this sense to depend upon, even if you have a son, to depend upon him for your monthly expense, even for the husbands. So I think, and even if she doesn't have such kind of a knowledge, you can go to a very track record good financial advisor, investor advisor. They would definitely help you out depending upon what are your incomes, what are your priorities in life, whether you need to have a money for the educations, for the marriage, for paying the housing loan debts and all these things. So I think they should not shy away from taking even the advice from the investor advisors, or the who can help you and you can guide you, depending upon your needs and all.
Sure. Cousins, I was intrigued by the point you were making of how much agency some of the women who have access to the internet now enjoy in terms of making financial decisions. But it's equally true that there is a large bulk of women who are left out of this. The last National Health Family Survey, for example, which is as early as 2019, points out that in a state like Bihar, for example, 4 in 5 women have never used the internet. As somebody who straddles technology so well, what can we do to make this more accessible to women, to make it easy for them to take that first step in terms of even having a conversation about their finance?
Right. So I just, it is a good, problem for a lot of entrepreneurs to solve. So whenever there is an underserved market or customer, I always get excited because it means there are opportunities for great products and businesses to be built here. I'll give an example from Rivigo, which is the company that I co-founded. We were working with truck drivers, and truck drivers in India, we had about 10 to 15,000 truck drivers on our platform, and they came from very rural India, and we were trying to build a tech product for them, and I was designing that product. My guidance to my team was they do not need to know how to build a product, how to use a product. 60%, we ran a survey, and 60% of the truck drivers at that time, 2014, didn't even have a smartphone. They were in places where there were like battery charging issues. There was no electricity, right? There was data issue because they were traveling, and I needed to get data of their location. And on top of that, they never used any apps, right? So through that as a challenge and set those constraints, I was amazed at what my team was able to come up with. One, they built the product to work in an offline mode, right? So you could just communicate through through the app, but the app converted the signals into SMS and sent it. So we solved the battery charging, internet data issues. Initially it's about knowing your customer, right? If the customer is that, you will have to provide some offline support, right? So for a lot of people building that kind of business, there is a bit of high touch initial sort of handholding to be done. And once they're on it, then the digital literacy, so to say, kicks in, right? Because a lot of our product was inspired by seeing the apps they were already using. So we were not introducing something new, we were just creating what they were used to seeing, talking in their language, what they are used to communicating in. And I think that's where it's a challenge, but also an opportunity for products to be built in India, which is how do you take these products to women in Bharat? So it's a good problem to solve, and I think it's been done in many areas. It's about people getting focused on this cohort and seeing how big and impactful this can be.
The unfortunate truth is that every conversation we have now has a post-COVID context to it. I mean, in any case, for women, professional careers or career paths have not been linear. That is the reality of the situation. And it's probably gotten exacerbated post-COVID, where when many women, because of their caregiving responsibilities or their childcare responsibilities, have had to take a break from work. How do you sort of support and advise women who are doing that? They're on a career break, but they're still trying to figure out their own finances. Oftentimes, they may be single women as well who have, children to take care of. What's the best way to think about investment and saving from that context?
Great question, Mitali. For women who are on a career break, I think one of the things that most often happens is there is this whole scare of sitting in a leaky bucket because nothing is coming in, but expenditures haven't stopped. So you're continuously depleting what you've earned or your savings, right? Which builds in this huge resistance to want to invest into anything, which, in my opinion, couldn't be worse. There couldn't be a worse time to take the decision to not invest when you are really sitting at a juncture where you do not have a fixed income source that feeds into your bucket. I think it is women who are on a career break should definitely invest some time into identifying what their financial goals are and then identifying a bouquet of products that make sense for them. Because they are the ones who will have the maximum diversity in terms of needs, right? They will need liquidity at the moment because there are regular expenditures to take care of, but they will also need to plan for emergencies, which could be related to family, children, whatever. They will also need to plan for a long-term future. For example, women with children will have to plan for how will they support their children's careers a few years down the line, so on and so forth. So they have the need space that they are in is possibly the most diverse versus all of us. And I think that is where deep financial prudence is mostly required, instead of sort of holding your pennies to yourself and saying, hey, I don't want to invest anywhere because there is nothing coming in. They should focus on figuring out what are those tools who are going to serve each of these needs, and then accordingly hedge their bucket and invest. I think one very important step that women can take, and I think Pinky ma'am hinted towards it, is to identify a financial advisor, an investment advisor. Very often, we as women tend to really put this on the back burner. We don't think it's important enough. We feel personal trainers in gymnasiums are important, personal beauticians are important, but somehow we tend to believe that personal investment advisors are not important. Trust me, they are. And if you have a good one, and it might take some effort to find the right one, but when you have the right person, it's like having a continuous companion who can share the load of financial planning with you, right? They do the research, they give you the right kind of information and enable you really to be able to make a decision and get to your goals. So I think that's one thing. In today's age of technology, you really also don't need to invest a lot of money around that. Enough and more companies, and I'm sure Aditya Birla Capital also, for example, or plenty of other organizations have these supports available for women at either free of cost or at a very, very minimal cost. I think it's very important to identify those and work with them to ensure that your financial independence continues irrespective of the steady stream of salary that was coming up to a point in time.
Sure. No, absolutely. I agree with you. I would only flip your comment to say I think there's a lot of homework and hard thinking to be done by the financial advisors themselves, because often women find themselves in conversation with a 65-year-old male who has preconceived notions about what a woman should or shouldn't do and why she should or shouldn't be saving money for travel. So I think, the ones who are financial advisors need to pivot and think harder about tailoring for women. Pinky, we are completely out of time, but a quick final word from you, because I'm keen on knowing whether interest and engagement with mutual funds as a category has increased amongst women. It's no secret what the stock market has been up to in the last couple of years. Are women turning to this as a tangible financial investment option more and more?
Yeah, so the mutual fund is a really good, one of the way of doing an investment. Now, let me take you that this invest for making an investment in long term is not an easy task for any of them. Many of them struggle. Many of them make mess out of their investments. They quit halfway and all these things. So, what are the benefits of mutual funds? First, I will tell you. It creates the long term wealth. First, because it requires a patience. It is not like that you invested today and you'll get the return. So the second thing is that you don't require a big amount of money. The firstly, even I can start with 500 rupees by way of a systematic investment plan monthly. Once I look at the returns, one time I will have a confidence in the fund. Once I look at, I can take a better risk. Then I start increasing my amount of the SIP. So it doesn't require a large amount of investment in the beginning. The third thing is a liquidity. Whenever I'm in the urgent need of the money, I can sell my mutual fund units, and I can get the money. The fourth thing is these products are very simple. It doesn't require any rocket science. You can understand that what kind of good funds and all these things, or even your investor advisors can help you, or any of your relatives or anybody can help you on that. The fourth thing is a diversification of the product, whether you would like to have it in equity, whether you would like to have investment in the debt. The other thing is that it tackles the volatility, that is. And the other thing is that you get the inflation adjusted return. Lastly, as a woman, I would tell you that we all have a very good attributes as a God gift is a patience. So I think, and this mutual fund investment by of a SIP requires, a very good patience, that it's going to give you a return in the long run. So I think this is the best is a portfolio according to me. The one should have every woman should have a part
Right.
of the investment one as a SIP to be very frank.
Right. I mean, guess where we've been practicing, right, Pinky? Of course, there's
Yeah.
patience. Ladies, thank you so much. It's been such an engaging chat. Thank you all for joining in with your insight. So much to learn, both in terms of taking that first step, reaching out, finding someone to tailor this for you, and of course, diversifying. We're completely out of time, so we're winding down over here. Thank you very much, Pooja. Thank you, Pinky. Thank you,
Thanks
Gazal.
for hosting. Thanks for Hindustan Times for giving the opportunities, and my thanks to the co-panels. I think we really made a good show by, speaking out of our own heart. To be very frank.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for having us over. It was a pleasure.
It was indeed. Thank you all so much. In fact, for those who are, still tuning in, we've got a bit of a surprise riding off on everything that you just heard. And I'm so glad to see that this is now a headline conversation and not relegated to the sidelines. I'd like to invite Mr. A. Balasubramaniam. For everyone who's part of the mutual fund industry for decades now, he's always been Bala. Welcome to formally inaugurate the For Her initiative that's been launched by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. It's in association with the Women's Collection Canada. Bala, welcome. Nice to have you here, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Yeah. Thanks, Mitali, for the wonderful panel discussion that I just concluded with three other powerful women talking about investment. So, as you rightly mentioned, this session is for creating independence, financial independence for women. So, therefore, I would like to formally inaugurate the For Her program of initiative of Aditya Birla Life Mutual Fund. So, can I have the AV please first? Just to give a very quick highlight of the purpose of For Her initiative of Aditya Birla Mutual Fund. Clearly, we had a conversation that the large pool of women in the country may or may not be aware about investment. At the same time, they remain a great influencer in every family in managing the financial needs of the family. Therefore, we felt that it is worth having a session exclusively addressing the needs of women in the country in order to give a financial independence. That, of course, I'm happy that again in coinciding with the Independence Day, which is of course just about 2 days away, 1 day away rather. I'm quite happy that this is being now initiated centering around the Independence Day and giving a financial independence to the women in the country. We'll of course focus on, as we have been doing in creating awareness about investing in Indian mutual fund industry. We will create separate content, separate models, and that's something would probably make it more relevant for the women in the country across different parts of walks of life, of different communities, and we'll probably have, using that content, various outreach programs that we will create through communities, NGOs, corporates, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the idea of this initiative is to create more education, knowledge about investing in the capital market, and then the need of every household influenced by women or the needs of the women in order to protect their own interest in the longer run, how they can go about investing in the capital market, and how can secure the future by creating a financial model that could help them in the long run to build their own future financial independence. So therefore, we'll have many activities being undertaken. I'm happy again, HT Media has been as a partner in this launch today. And we intend to cover more than 20 million women across the country in creating awareness about investing in financial market in general and particular about mutual fund. I'm also, of course, delighted to have Tula Jalasja, is the founder of the Women's Collection Canada, to be our partner in this journey of educating Indian women. And when we, of course, got this reference, I did realize that she was a very powerful woman, being part of a multinational company. Of course, we do have presence in India. But after being part of the large organization, she felt the need of educating women about the financial independence that they need to build for securing the future. We are now starting this initiative in collaboration with the Women's Collection founder Tula Chalascha. And this collaboration, I'm sure, will reach out to more number of people in the country, bringing in some of the practices that is being adopted internationally. So I would like to now invite the words of wisdom from Tula Jalacha, and I'm also happy that for the association that we are now bringing in with them and Atula Sun Life Mutual Fund.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tula Jalacha, founder of the Women's Collection.
I am so excited.
I am so excited
with
to
Aditya
partner
Birla,
with Aditya Birla,
Asset Management Company, and Mr.
Balu
Balu
and Mr. Balu
and his team to launch the For Her initiative in India. For Her is such an incredible and innovative initiative to further financial literacy,
and
education
for all the women in India.
At the Women's Collection,
we have strongly held the
belief that educating and empowering women is the key not only to economic growth, political stability, and social transformation. We have made it our mission to be the top provider of financial education, financial empowerment, and financial wellness for women globally. Our team at the Women's Collection has 70 plus years of financial services and financial education and training experience. And we've been providing education globally, including Canada, the US, and even a number of the Caribbean countries. Together with Aditya Birla team, we will bring you educational content in the matter you like to learn, and also at your own pace. The For Her program is laser focused to bring financial education to all women of India, regardless of their current level of knowledge. I want to thank Mr. Bala Subramanian, Mr. Rao, and the entire Aditya Birla team for their trust and partnership. And I do hope everyone takes advantage of the For Her program for your own financial empowerment and financial wellness, and any of the other wonderful women that are in your life that you would like to empower. Thank you.
Thank you, Tula, and it is a wonderful partnership that we are keenly looking forward to in educating Indian women population in managing their money. I'm sure this initiative venture will add greater value in understanding how global market functions. Also, on your experience of managing money, I'm sure is going to be helpful for a large pool of people. Thanks for joining us on the Nivesh Mahakumbh, which is one of the large forum event that we at Sun Life Mutual Fund have been doing for the last many number of years, as part of our educational initiative, knowledge sharing initiative of Aditya Sun Life Mutual Fund in developing mutual fund industry in general, and particular about Aditya Sun Life Mutual Fund. Thank you very much.
Watching the Nivesh Mahakumbh 2021, where we'll now explore a conversation around how to reset financially after a crisis. Now, the economic fallout unleashed by the COVID-19 crisis has caused a seismic shift in the attitude towards money. Job losses, salary cuts, and shutdown in businesses have upended lives, while piling medical expenses have prolonged the ordeal for many. Yes, the economy has been kickstarted again, but the scars left behind by the crisis will take a while to heal, especially for those whose finances were already in a fragile shape. Now, in this fireside chat, I'm joined by Rupa Venkatkrishnan, Director at Sapient Wealth Advisors and Brokers, who will outline how you can wipe the slate clean and reset financially after a crisis. Rupa, great to have you with us. Let's start this chat with what is the right way for investors to gauge whether they should adopt a completely new strategy or build a new one after tiding over a crisis. Your thoughts on that? I believe your audio is on mute, Rupa. If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share and on this 75th year of our independence. And I think it's the prime importance saying that all of us may be financially prudent and financially well off. I think the pandemic has put the spotlight on the importance of health and the financial security. I think it's just thrown open the we used to always have that in the mind, but we never used to focus on it or we never gave importance to it. I think it's the time has come where I think the pandemic has taught us to give that importance to see that how we are financially prudent and how we are financially invested so that we come out of this crisis. I think to gauge the strategy for the most important parameters that we need to look at to come out of this crisis is basically we need to look at how much is our risk tolerance, what is the time horizon that we have to do an investment, and what is that amount of principal that we have to invest for our future financial security. I think these are the parameters that we need to uh, put down. I think we have to sit down and budget our income, our expenses, wherever we, splurge out our expenses. Maybe we should stop it. The second important thing is about health security. I think as we never gave importance to life insurance or a health insurance. We kept on delaying it and saying that if not today, tomorrow. I think these are the important parameters which are very important that we need to highlight. And it becomes a paramount importance to do it as of yesterday. And if people can sit across, analyze with the family, with your financial advisors or an insurance consultant, your chartered accountant, I think it's high time that we sit and set our records straight.
All right, you laid out the roadmap, but considering the behavioral aspect of it, choosing the right investment product after a rough period can be a tricky issue for investors. So, how should they navigate that?
So, very simply, if you jot down, if you have a roadmap put in saying that what are your short term goals, what are your long term goals, what are your very immediate goals, if you budget that, you can clearly plan out because there are so many options available today in the system, which is for basically investing for 1 month, 3 months, 5 months, 3 years, 4 years, wealth creation for 15, 20 years. You have a basket of products which are available today in the financial system, but it is unless and until you don't budget, you won't be able to put that investment into the right baskets. I think once you do that, and if you basket it, I think you will be able to stream through it. Like for example, if somebody has got into a debt because of your credit card expenses and your salaries have been cut, or if you have hospital expenses which have really put stress on your budget, I think if you budget it and say that, how do I plan to overcome it in the next 1 year, 2 years? I think it is easily possible, but somebody has to sit and do that and budget it. And there is nothing which is impossible. It's just that you have to sit prudently, sit with some experts to understand it, who will be able to navigate through that whole journey.
Now, when it comes to financial planning, there are, of course, short-term goals and long-term goals. But the question is, what are the factors that investors should bear in mind if they have to completely realign their financial goals after a crisis where it's all of a sudden, it's not planned, so to say. So what do you do when that happens?
So the first is to see that do we have contingency money put in, What did the pandemic teach us is saying that have we got kitty of around 6 to 8 months of expenses which we have kept aside, which is called as a contingency money. Now that contingency could be to run your household and to also have your medical expenses that you would incur in the future, which are unexpected. So if you build a contingency fund for yourself, these crises can be averted to a larger extent. So the first thing to see that, have I put aside a 6 months of my household expenses separately and some money for my medical contingencies? If you put that aside, I think a lot of your problems would get sorted and the stress on yourself will reduce.
All right, but that's in cases where liquidity is available. In cases where there may be a high debt burden, say due to a crisis, what are the ways to restart saving and investing instead of, say, delaying it until the debt load is clear?
So the first and foremost which comes is into saying that if you have lost your job, then it's very difficult for you to build in a plan and say that what is the next thing till the time you have an income which really comes in. Once your income starts building in, I think the first thing is to take out and pay off your debt because you're paying a very high interest. And once you are able to pay out your interest, the second important thing that you will have to do is to set your contingency fund. Obviously, this is going to take around maybe a year and a half to set all of this into place, but the journey has to start today. So the first and foremost has to be pay off your debt, spend less, and see that how much you can save off and pay more, because most of us get into debt is because we just spend beyond our incomes. And if we are spending beyond our incomes, that's where the cash flow becomes tight. In situations where you lose a job, your salary cuts happen, I think that's where discipline needs to be put in from the first place, that you live within your means, don't spend beyond your means.
Absolutely. Discipline and diligence, those are the two key
And
words.
one more important thing is there is a difference between saving and investing. Correct? People save, but they don't invest prudently.
That's very important. Don't just keep saving, invest it as well. So let's bring it all together as we wrap up the conversation. How to prioritize different financial objectives after the crisis. For instance, reviving liquidity, paying off EMIs, or resetting an emergency fund, or restarting investment for goals with varying time horizons. If you can just lay out the priorities in an easy to understand manner as we wrap up the conversation.
Sure. So the first important thing is saying that analyze what's your income is. Put down all your points of your expenses. What is that you need after your household expenses, your immediate expenses? What is that you will need after 6 months, 5 months, or after a month, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever is your plan that you want to do. Once you lay that out, sit with somebody and understand, saying that what is your risk tolerance, what is your time horizon, what's the amount of money that you have to put in. You might have to stretch yourself and spend less and put that, but the first and foremost is sit with a financial consultant, sit with your insurance consultant, sit with your chartered accountant to understand and put a roadmap to help you to overcome all this crisis that we have gone through. Second important, very important thing is saying that we need to we have to do it as on yesterday. Don't prolong it and say that I'll do it after 6 months or 1 month. Today is the time that you will have to do that, to restructure, because it is like thinking of restructuring of your financial life, just like your financial health is concerned. One important thing is saying that, which most of the people ignore, is even today people push forward insurances like life insurance or a health insurance. I think these are very paramount important that you need to look at. Think of it as a restructuring of your financial life.
Absolutely. All those points that you need to keep in mind as you reset financially. Rupa, thank you so much for the wise words that you've shared with us, the White Council. And of course, I hope those watching this will at least have a bolstering of their confidence, and especially those who are starting their financial journey. Some very important points raised there by by Rupa. And as Margaret Thatcher once said, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. So I guess that motto holds true when you want to reset financially. So all those steps outlined by Rupa could help you in your journey. Thank you so much for sharing with us
Thank
your
you so
insights,
much.
Rupa. And we move on
Thank
to
you.
understanding more about debt traps before we move on to our next segment. So here's a short look at a video.
Debt can be a friend or an enemy. It all depends on you. To George, it's a friend that adds value to his life. For Viraj, it's an enemy to be defeated. These two men who live similar lives have different approaches to debt, which affects their financial health. When George uses a credit card to shop or pay bills, he ensures that he pays off the entire bill before it's due. This helps keep him debt-free. When Viraj uses a credit card, he pays the bare minimum when he can. This erratic payment pattern has triggered a monthly interest of 2.5 to 4% and an additional annual interest of 30% to 47%, making his debt grow steadily. So, while George enjoys his life, Viraj sinks from debt. This difference in debt management has impacted all areas of their lives. Both George and Viraj took loans to buy homes, but only one struggled to sustain their lifestyle. Before George took out a loan to buy a home, he evaluated his existing income and expenditure and reallocated his budget. This helped ensure that he could make mortgage payments and sustain his lifestyle. When Viraj took out a home loan, he factored in his income and existing debt, a car loan and credit card bills. He did not factor in living expenses, required investments and emergencies. This pushed his debt above 36%, the highest recommended debt to income ratio. This left him struggling to pay for everyday essentials like groceries, utility bills and fuel. He became dependent on credit cards to sustain his lifestyle. It has taxed his bank account and left him unable to fulfill other goals financially without undertaking more debt. Taking on too much debt has made him financially vulnerable and mentally overwhelmed. What to keep in mind when taking on debt? Recommended debt to income ratio is 36% or lower. Ideal mortgage debt shouldn't exceed 28%. To avoid falling into the debt trap like Viraj, you need to take on debt smartly. Before you spend, analyze whether the debt adds value to your life or not. Evaluate your financial situation. Consider investing to achieve your goal. Relook at your budget to ensure you are not taking on too much debt. Ensure your debt to income ratio doesn't exceed 36%. Pay off your debt on time to avoid paying penalties. If you keep these points in mind, you could be able to avoid the debt trap and live the life you want. Think now, live well later. An investor education and awareness initiative by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Nivesh Mahakumbh. I'm Harshil, I'm the founder and CEO of Razorpay, and today we'll be talking about FIRE, financial independence and retirement early. For those of you who don't know, it may seem like an exaggeration if we were to tell you that you could quit running your 9 to 5 hamster wheel before you reach conventional retirement age. But it is indeed possible. How? In personal finance parlance, FIRE is a new movement that is an abbreviation for financial independence and retire early. It is a financial movement in which the goal is to create a solid reservoir of savings and investments so that you can retire earlier than your regular saving and retirement strategy. Get ready for an eye-opening session on how you can fulfill your dreams of retiring early without having to worry about finances. Today we have with us Nikhil Kamath, the co-founder and CIO of Zerodha and True Beacon, Upasana Taku, co-founder and CEO of MobiQuick, Harsh Jain, co-founder and CEO of Grow. And we have a very strong panel here who's going to speak about how this could be a viable strategy if you are planning a career. Let me start with Mr. Kamath. If you could throw some light on the FIRE strategy, Nikhil, you have spoken about a lot about financial independence, how people could plan their retirement. What is your view on this strategy and how could somebody plan it out?
Hi, Harshil. Nice to see you again. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people fail to understand that growing wealth is almost as important as earning wealth. We often spend all our time in the job that we have and the businesses that we run, and we spend very little time trying to figure out how to manage that money better. So, extremely important. I have dealt with many people in many walks of life at different ages who are trying to plan for retirement. It's a different answer for every single one of them. But to give it ample time and to spend effort on trying to figure out what kind of wealth management suits your own personal needs, I think is cardinal. It's very important and something that everybody should do.
Thanks, Nikhil. But like if I were to take it again, and we could probably move to Upasana, right? Like if I were to plan the strategy, right, like that I want to retire early and I want to start investing right now to create a reservoir of wealth. Upasana, what would you do? Like where would you invest your money? How at what age would you start planning this?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, thanks for having me here. To the team organizers, very good company. I would say that one should start thinking about investing from day one. Like the first check that you get when you get your first job, that's when a person needs to start thinking about investing. And I can say that I probably started when I was 26 years old, a few years into work. And that's when I realized that, just the baseline, I don't know about you guys, but, I come from a very simple middle class family. Both my parents were professors and teachers. So the only thing I had heard them do over the years was एक घर बनाना है और एक FD में पैसे रखने हैं. And of course, I was, studying and working abroad, and my horizons were expanded. So I thought about, well, that's not enough. Like the FD rate, the deposit rate in India right now is very low, and I believe in US at that time it was 2.5-3%. So that's when I started thinking and exploring about what are the other options, where whether it is liquid funds, mutual funds, in fact even the share market. And then, even real estate. Currently, I'm not sure about in India how much value one can derive, but in different geographies, at different points in time, people could derive a lot of, value out of real estate investments also. So to my mind, the millennials today, the young generation of India, which is sort of half of India, we all get very excited and happy once we start making money and start spending it. And one should, improve one's and family's lifestyle. But one should also start thinking about, how are we going to live off till the end of our lifetime? And to that extent, I think starting early is important. Whatever one can start with, whether it's 10%, 20%, setting that aside in higher returns.
Yeah, thanks, Upasana. Harsh, I think a lot of folks who started this strategy are young, right? Like from right out of college, in their first jobs, and sometimes they have high debt liability. They have student loans, college loans, and stuff. So, what would be your advice to such investors? Like, should they clear up the debt liability first? Should they start creating long-term wealth-generating instrument? What would your advice to be for somebody who's already carrying a debt liability but wants to retire very early?
Sure. Thanks, Harshil. for moderating this. It's a really good company. See on retirement and loan, I see the loan, most of the loans as an investment. Sometimes, like while people keep saying that you just loan is dangerous, should not have loan, but I think person was mentioning buying house, like somebody taking a loan for a house, it's a humongous loan, but then it's an investment which will give you a comfort, confidence, and an asset that you can feel retired from a need of working to earn money. And even people take education loans, right? So paying off that loan is upgrading you, right? Your income, your earning capabilities are going to go up, and your savings will naturally go up, and you'll have more money to invest. So loans need to be treated in what those loans are for, and if that's planning in a way that helps you earn, save, invest more in the future, that also is a good strategy. Not that every loan will be like that, not that every spend will be like that, not that every investment will lead you to the right place where you can be retired early. But having said that, it's a very again, it may sound like a gyan, but then it's a very simple strategy. You start early, you do it regularly, and you keep increasing the amount. And if you keep doing this for long, you'll feel comfortable. It may be 38, 30, 40, 45. It's the age may be different for different people. It may be a different amount for everyone, but I think it's more of the confidence and the comfort that, hey, now I know that I don't need to really work for money. I have enough money, or I have enough saving, or I have enough sources and assets where I can get my future financial needs from, and now I can do something that I want to do. It may be rest, or it may be some entrepreneurial journey, or it may be something that you want to pursue as a hobby. So that's the retirement for me.
Oh, interesting. So basically, you're saying like you don't need to completely stay away from debt. Like you have to plan it well, but like even with debt, you could still go through the FIRE strategy. That is interesting. I think I'll go back to like something that Upasana said, right? Like when I was young as well, I used to think that, hey, once you get 1 crore of rupees, then you, at that point of time, the interest rates are 10% and you get like 10 lakh a year. That is enough for you to survive. Like, why do you need to ever do a job again in your life? Of course, as you grow up, you realize that things are far more complex, and of course, interest rates have been falling. So in the current environment, and I'll pose this to Nikhil, given that you have been a trader yourself, right? In the current environment, what could be the investment instruments that somebody could look at for executing this? Like, should they go with FDs, real estate, stocks, direct equity? Like, what would be your strategy for something like this?
So Harshal, at the current juncture, I think a case can be made to remove leverage. Every asset class, from private equity to public equity to real estate, everything seems overinflated and frothy today. People are, when I sometimes see some of the valuations of today, manufacturing companies trading at 130 times, or chemical companies trading at 50 times. Things are a bit too overheated, and a lot of people are coming into the equity ecosystem in the last 1 or 2 years. I would, in fact, like to recommend some amount of caution and diversification out of risky assets such as equity and real estate and what was the other thing you spoke about? Private equity. I would, in fact, recommend you build a more diversified portfolio and people get some exposure to things like fixed income instruments where the amount of risk is much lesser than any of these riskier asset classes.
Yeah.
Are you typing down what I'm saying, Harsh? What was that?
What do you?
Yeah.
Then I'm noting some points to talk about it, but sure.
Actually, I was going to
No, I
ask him
think
if I could, Harshil. You didn't say anything about debt funds.
so. See, I am not from this from the investment ecosystem, right? I like to keep things simple. I have always invested in either in FDs or in mutual funds, and some cases equity directly, right? So, and that is why you guys are the experts. I would lean on you to tell, like.
Harshil is very smart. He makes money when anyone of our clients gives us money. He makes money in between. He doesn't have to buy about investment.
Yeah. No, that is interesting, right? So, Upasana, you were saying something about the debt funds, right? Like, would you like to go deeper into that? Do you think that is a better strategy compared to others?
Yeah, I mean, our co-panelist was telling people that there is risk in certain asset classes. So I was actually asking him that what did he think about debt funds. I wanted to get his take.
I like
Oh,
debt
okay.
funds, Upasana. Depends on what kind of debt. I like the very, very safe government debt, tax-free bonds, government securities, the kind of stuff which gives you 4% net of taxes. I'm happy with that. It's such a great instrument. I don't know why more people don't go for that.
Yeah, I had the
Interesting.
same
Interesting.
feeling. I have the same feeling, which is why I wanted to reaffirm it with you, since you are the expert here.
And probably I'll pose this to Harsh, right? Like, what is your view on these? There are these retirement plans, like fixed income plans and insurance schemes that promise you that you'll get X amount of salary after a certain age. Do you think that is a better option versus the broad investment strategy that you have to figure out yourself?
Yeah, so actually, there's no one who can promise you what you'll get in future. And if it's a promise, then I mean, I'll go with Nikhil. It's a government security. I mean, I'll trust the government of India and nobody else, to be able to give me a return. And that's we are talking about 4%, right? So the simpler the product is, the easier it is to understand, and the easier the adoption will be. The more we convolute it, we put a lot of things in it, like insurance, investment, fixed return, some part of it going as part A, part B. Every complexity added to it is actually a cost to it, and that cost is coming from people's hard-earned money, which they are investing in that. So I prefer, have a clarity. Again, like, you want to have safe investments, you want to have it in an emergency, like anytime you want to have liquid access to it, or you are okay, you're starting early, you can invest for long term. Then you have the instruments which will suit to them. So individually pick up the right product for the right thing, and then, I mean, stay with it, keep a tab on it, how it's doing, how it's growing, learn about it, participate in why things are happening. Then you'll gain confidence. And earlier, I remember we were talking about, like, when people start. So Asna, probably you started 26. A lot of people started at that age, and they would have worked for a few years before. Like, I started in college when I was in fourth year, but that was not really investing and not really retirement in my head. It was just to learn and have fun with different instruments. But that helps you with the learning curve, because when I was earning, then I had learned a few things which just out of curiosity and those things. So I think it's the right instrument at the right time, but then there's a lot of learning which is required to do that, to know what is right, and that should happen way earlier.
Interesting. I'll come over to you, Pasna. I think see, one of the ways that people lead their lives typically is that you go through job for till 60 years of your age and accumulate enough that you can retire and like live with a family and everything else. But this fast strategy is very different, right? Like, it requires you to put a lot of effort. It requires a lot of discipline. You try to save almost 75-80% of all your income, and that requires you to lead a very frugal lifestyle for 10-15 years. And this is generally the peak of your career, to save enough that you can retire at like 40 or something, right? So in your opinion, like, do you think this is a better strategy for people, like especially people who want to pursue their passion, or the standard way that you work till 60, and if you want to pursue passions, pursue it on the side and have work-life balance? What would be your view on that?
See, my personal experience on that is very biased, so I don't know whether it works for everyone, but I can tell you what I did. So I think from started working 4-5 years, I worked like a regular professional in the valley, and I would say I lived nicely, but I did also save. The Indian saving mentality was there. And then after that, I moved to a fairly frugal life, and I also invested the last 12 years of my life in building out MobiKwik, hopefully to create some impact in the Indian market. And since my entire sweat equity was already in one company's equity, therefore I didn't invest in any risky, equity type of asset. Safe and low interest deriving, because I had already made my big bet of the equity of the company, which hopefully, as we turn public, will create value for myself and my family. But so that's been my journey. I would say if people have a passion, whether it is investing or whether it is
music, sports, or what have you, then it might be, worth it to in one basket and put all your safe eggs where you can have a safety net, in a diversified yet low risk baskets.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I think Upasna is the kind of customer that probably Nikhil and Harsh would hate, right? Because they would want people to trade on equity and they would want people to try those instruments. So I'll come to you, Nikhil. Like, do you think that's the right strategy to play it safe, or would you like tell people that they should try their hands at Zerodha, try their hands at equity investing? Maybe they can get some multi-baggers and retire early faster that way.
Well, see, Harshil, we are a conduit, right? We are a bridge. That's it. We allow for people to execute on our platform. Being candid, if I were to say what I really feel, I feel at the current juncture, everything is so expensive and feels like a bubble. If somebody is building a portfolio afresh today, I would agree with Upasna and say, take lesser risk, buy more risk-free instruments, and build a more wholesome portfolio which has some equity in it, but not too much of it. It's a bit, it's bad for my business to say that, but I think at this point of time, you see so many young new people in the markets who have had a taste of money. They've made 30-40% on anything they bought in the last 1 year. The problem with new people coming into the market, when that happens, they expect for it to happen again and again and again. And typically you continue to add leverage as long as it happens. So it's a scary time. I don't know what's happening at Grow, but I'm assuming pretty much the same experiences they might be facing. It's people today buy equity not because they like the company, they like the valuation or any of that. People are buying equity because a friend of theirs bought a certain stock and it went up 50%, and they're hoping the same happens to them. So tough times to live in and tough times to suggest someone how to build a portfolio now. But let's say their equity exposure used to be 40% historically, it would probably be wise to bring it down to 25 if they're building one portfolio afresh.
So you brought
Great,
out
interesting, Nikhil. Yeah, go ahead, Upasna.
Harshil, I just wanted to
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you brought out a good point about leverage. I don't get it. Like, why are people doing that? Like, this is your hard-earned money. Why are they, leveraging themselves? It's not gambling, right? We are not in Vegas. So I don't get it. I just don't get it.
I'll tell you, the problem is if you are a 23, 24-year-old young man in India, you've got your first job, you're able to save 2-3 lakhs a year. Let's assume you have a decent job. If you invest 2-3 lakhs in the market and earn, say, 10% a year, which is what traditionally the Nifty has done, is 20,000 rupees. It's not appealing to them at all, right? Instead, if they leverage it, they can make 2 lakhs or they can lose 2 lakhs, but much faster. So that is very appetizing to a whole bunch of people, and not just here, across the world, right? The regulator has done a fair job in curtailing leverage on many fronts. SEBI has in the last 1 year. But if one were to still, try and figure out how to get leverage, it's not so hard. You can still use options. You can borrow from an NBFC. You can do a bunch of things. So it is an issue. The problem with the thing is, it's not good for me to say it. I mean, people like me and Grow should not be saying stuff like this. But we'd rather have a profitable investor who stays solvent for 10 years than have investors who burn out this year and we have to look for new investors in 2-3 years. So from that logic, I think it makes sense. We need a more savvy, longer-term investor.
Interesting. I would bring it to Harsh as well, right? Like, so Nikhil is saying that people should play safe and go through the traditional investing route. But would you think that today's generation would go with that methodology? Like you are seeing like people investing in crypto and even more speculative assets than even equity, right? And putting a lot of their life savings on it. So, and it seems exciting for them. A lot of people have tasted money through that channel, right? So do you think like that generation would heed to this advice and try a more safer traditional investment strategy?
Harshil, very difficult to say, because I think last 2-3 years we didn't see, we saw very briefly the downward movement. usually you'll expect like every time the market falls 2-3%, and then you'll suddenly see a reaction that people are not coming in or people are not trading enough. But we haven't seen that even for a smaller duration that has happened. So while I do agree, looking at the last 15-20 years, different economies, that yes, this cannot continue forever. Like the market cannot keep on, growing at this pace forever. Of course, there will be a time there will be some differences. There will be different directions that will take, and people will react very differently. One difference I'm seeing, and I'll agree to most of the points. I think of course they should. That's behavior that's gonna be tested soon. But one difference I'm seeing is the level of knowledge, the level of information, the level of questions that the new generation of people, investors, are having today. If I have to compare it with probably 10 years back, or maybe even the duration, 2008, 2009, and that time when people panicked, and even before that at the Harshit Mehta time, so the difference was that people were following the exuberance, but they were following it like a black box, with the limited information. Today, the information is so democratic. Like people when they ask questions, when the market goes down, we've seen a behavior, people try buying more. So that may place some sort of question that they'll understand that, hey, we got 30-40% return today, we got a -10, we may get a -10% return in future, but then we'll come back again. So it may happen so, but it may not. I mean, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in future, but there should be some level of education that has happened over the last 4-5 years, because there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of appetite for content. There's a lot of communities. People talk, people read. So that should play to some level of sanity in that.
Yeah, definitely. Like we are in the generation of social media investing, right? Where investment decisions are made based on social media and memes, right? So it's an interesting time. I'll bring to you, Pasna. You said this earlier, right? Like you worked for a certain period of time, then you saved enough, and then you went to pursue your passion, which was moving. A lot of people, like not everyone wants to start up, but a lot of people have their own passions, right? For example, they want to work for an NGO, they want to do philanthropic work, and they can't lead the lifestyle they want while pursuing their passion. So do you think that is the right strategy for such people, right? Like that work for 15 years, do all in your job, spend the 15 years prime of your career in earning what you want, and then go and pursue your passion full time?
Yeah, see, this is more like a life decision than an investing decision. So, both models work, right? Like there are all kinds of people, billions of us all over the world. There are some people, who throughout their life have a regular 9 to 6 job, and then their evenings and weekends are, something they commit to their passion. And there's no harm in doing it that way. There are other people who say that, okay, it also depends, whether you were born with a silver or bronze spoon or whatever, and what is your family background. There are people who can afford to have a safety net and can afford to directly jump into their passion. There are others who have to first create a safety net by working for a few years. And a good strategy might be to take the first 5, 8, 10 years of your life, whatever you need to set aside the future safety for yourself and your dependents, and then take a risk for the next 5-10 years and do whatever you want to do. So both approaches are fine, but the financial planning has to be done accordingly. In the first approach, of course, you're earning all the time, so you don't have to think much. But in the second approach, you have to take you have to be far more frugal in saving when you are working to create a savings balance, and then you can afford to work on your passion. Actually, one more point which you haven't asked me, but I will stress on as my moral responsibility. Women in India and all over the world need to invest on their own. And by on their own, I mean own trading accounts, own demat accounts, and applying their own, brains to it. It's quite appalling that while we have a poorer working women ratio in India as compared to other developed markets, but even of those, many young women as well as working women are not investing themselves, and their financial planning is actually done either by their fathers, brothers, or partners, etc. And I think this has got to change. I mean, financial independence is important for all the genders, and I would definitely like to tell everyone to work on that path right from the beginning. It doesn't matter whether you are married and you have a very happy married life, you still can have your own finances that you manage on your own, there's no point in not discussing it with your family members, but you should definitely think about tracking it yourself, and you should have your own goals as to what kind of wealth you want to build for yourself and your family.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point, Upasana. Thanks for bringing it up. I'd go to Nikhil for just last few thoughts, right? On again, same question that I posed to Upasana, right? In your understanding of the markets and everything, right? Like and financial planning, right? Do you think it is a right strategy to go through the FIRE approach, spend 15 years and do that, and then relax for the rest of your life, or would you pursue the other approach? Have your work-life balance and have it mapped out. Enjoy your evenings, enjoy your weekends, but work for 60 years of your age.
The way the world is evolving, Harshil, I don't think people will have one job for 30, 40, 50 years anymore. Demographically, we all are changing. I think the gig economy is going to be tremendously large in the coming decades. If I were to wager a bet, I would say people would have many jobs, each lasting 5 to 10 years, versus having one vocation which takes them to the end of their work life. So things will change. Saving will become important because you can equate savings to freedom in one way or another. The more you have saved up for the millennial generation or the new generation, it will mean being able to live where they want, travel to where they want, which is becoming exceedingly important. I think it'll shift to a smaller work week where we have a lot of time for other stuff. History has proven that people are more productive when they're working for shorter durations. And yeah, plenty will change, but I agree with Upasana on a couple of fronts that firstly, Upasana, I have to say, when you said women should invest, I was like, yes, it's good for all of us. It's beneficial for everybody on the call here, including Harshil.
And I was not very happy when you and Harsh did not speak about it. You have to. Every male who is in this business has to talk about it.
Upasana, we want everybody, women, kids, grandparents, uncles, everybody is good for us. So if you want us to talk about each other, we will. But at the end of the day, a transaction is a transaction for all of us, right? But I'll tell you, in terms of data, the number of women who use broking services, I think, is about 17% or 16%. 84% is men. So definitely something has to change there. I feel people should start saving early, like you mentioned earlier as well, and people should be creative with their savings when they save early, and do interesting things with them as well. Yeah, that's it, Harshil. Back to you.
Thanks, Nikhil. I think we are running out of time, but last 2 minutes to Harsh, right? Like your thoughts on the same question, right? Like, so Upasana said you could go this way, you could go that way, and of course he started on the point that women should invest as well. Nikhil said that it will probably be a hybrid approach. It will come out where work life itself starts becoming shorter. You don't work for the same job for 30 years. You have more time out of work, and it will become a smooth balance of things. What will your view be, Harsh?
See, yeah, I think it's dependent on everyone's background and the aspirations. So because retiring early doesn't just mean that you don't want to work, right? The aspirations may be different. If you calculate, as you said, right, I want to be crorepati, 10 lakh rupees saal ke milenge is good enough for me. I'm happy. But your aspirations grow faster than the inflation, and we always calculate that inflation will be like this, and then we'll have this much money. So your planning of retiring early has to be very careful if you are letting go of the present day's comforts and the life. So I personally, again, I don't feel that's the right approach to park every fun or every spend luxury to the post retirement and then do everything to save money. But doing it smartly, I think you can have a right balance between, because you don't need to just save, you can invest, right? And investing will give you much faster journey to where you want to go. And it's not that you want to retire, you don't want to work, and you may not be earning. So you create assets that you give money. All your investments will earn money for you, right? Even if it's a real estate or equity or any of the debt funds, any of the asset class will get you money. So I mean, it's a balanced approach. You can't choose one. And again, yes, women should invest. I mean, I agree. And obviously, there's no denying. And at some point, we internally, as a team, and we keep figuring out, what should we do. We ran a campaign also, almost, on the Women's Day. We like trying to encourage, trying to do different ways, and any thing that has to be done. And it's not just women. I think every sector, as Nikhil said. So yeah, it's good for everyone. It's good for the nation.
Hey, thank you all of you for giving those beautiful insights. I think, as of course, Nitin, Nikhil, and Harsh want everyone to invest, like not women, but not only women, but grandchildren, grandparents. Of course, it's good for their business.
I've been hearing news about Razorpay raising funds. We're still wondering why you are not investing. They must be like.
It's because it's Razorpay raising fund, not me raising fund, right? So, like Upasana said, everything is logged in that sweat equity, right? So I don't have as much to invest. But I look at all the platforms to figure out which one is doing great. But I think
give half and give Harsh half. Like we split it between the two.
Yeah.
What say, Harsh?
Maybe adjusting. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to give it to you if I had enough money.
Great.
No, thank you all for this interactive session. I think it was very insightful, and I hope the millennials who are investing in the strategy are listening. I think while it is a good strategy to pursue, you need to balance it out. There are enough avenues to balance it out, and I think, and the word of caution from Nikhil, that markets are very frenzied right now, so you need to be careful about how you're planning it for today. Thank you, everyone. Over to the organizers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Nivesh Mahakumbh. Well, time and tide wait for none. And in the context of an investor, time is money. The more time you have on your side, the better the returns could be on your investment. Starting early has many benefits, the foremost being the magic of compounding, which can make a world of difference to your financial health. To tell us about the best way to start an investment journey early on and how it can help you in becoming financially secure, I'm joined by Kirti Gupta, COO at Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC Limited for this fireside chat. Kirti, great to have you on board. Let's start with the best age to start investing. Seems like a simple question, but well, the answers vary. What's your view on this?
Thanks, Gautam. Thanks for having me. I think you just said time is money, and that's the most important part. We all know when to start as early as possible. But in reality, I fully agree with you. It's much difficult than the executed. But I personally believe out there that if we are able to inculcate that feeling or that discipline as early as possible. So let's take an example. We all are Indians and we all celebrate festivals and we all get some amount of gifts, maybe in the form of cash or any other. So whenever you get, if you can start building that particular habit, this particular habit at that point of a time, I think a long go. I personally believe one very important aspect which we miss completely into our education system is how do we teach our kids at the school stage to at least introduce them with the concept of savings. Today, all of them get some kind of a pocket money. Today, all of them have some kind of a financial freedom where they have a choice to make that which t-shirts you want to buy or which toy you want to buy. But if you're trying to help them build that particular, I think will go a long way. Our financial literacy is very, very, I personally believe is at very low, and we are becoming more and more protective. Instead of being protective, if we become more rational
and handhold, I think will go a long way. But yes, your point is, I think there are no two ways about it, as early as possible. Uh, I fully agree that in certain circumstances, you will not be able to define that early, or it cannot be same for every and each person, but you define what that early is. The second point I said, it might happen that based on certain kind of a life conditions, you're not able to make that investment. But please invest time in educating yourself the norms of investments, and that will take you long way. So that's why it says, if you don't have money to invest, please invest time, effort, and learnings to learn the norms of investments and saving. And probably this investment will reap benefit when you really have the very first day when you start getting your pocket money, or your check pay, or your first entrepreneur's first order out there. Just do that.
Absolutely. Imbibe it as part of your life. And you're right. I mean, when you start educating it at the school level itself, it becomes part of someone's DNA around thinking about money. But as you mentioned, discipline, what are your tips to maintain a disciplined approach to investment, especially for those who have debt burdens?
So, Gaurav, I would just say some things. Till the time you have a debt, I don't have a problem. But the moment you add burden, I think that shows that somewhere we have didn't put things into right perspective on day one. And I would come back and say again, if you have educated yourself well at the early stage, you will be able to avoid a debt burden. But maybe there can be circumstances in life where you have end up into that. The first and foremost things which I understand out there is you need to understand the economics of debt. And the moment you start understanding the economics of debt, then you will start doing what kind of a cash flow planning that I need. Once you put both these things into order, you will decide what is the kind of an investments I need to make. So over a period of a time, I'm able to reduce this debt burden consciously. And the moment you do that, please be rest assured you will be back into track. Your balance sheet will become healthy. You'll see the liability side coming down and the asset sides going up. And then you'll start seeing your investments start giving you a return and helping you bringing the debt burden down. First of all, the best thing is to avoid being into a debt trap. And unfortunately, because of any kind of a circumstances, you are into that, then please understand what is it that's causing that particular debt, understand the economics of that particular debt, and try and manage the cash flows to bring that down debt efficiently lower. It may be a smaller additional savings. It can be taking up that 5 basis point or 10 basis point even to start earning more from your savings and your investments and deploying it religiously. I think not just the discipline out there, the religious words become very, very important. So if you do that, I'm sure you'll be able to bring that particular thing down.
All right. But as you cross the threshold of the debt issue, how should investors gauge which investment products then are suitable for them for different stages of life?
So, I have a slightly different thought out here, and I keep saying is it's not just the life stage which should determine what product you're supposed to make. There are various other components that you need to understand before you decide what kind of a thing. It may happen that you are a senior citizen, or you are at 60 or 70s or 80, but financially you have been into such a healthy state that you still have the ability to multiply rather than just think of that incremental. So my suggestion has always been that along with your life stage, there are few things which you need to understand. The first and foremost, which I comes up and says, please look at your balance sheet. Please look at your own financials out there. That should help you in guiding where you're supposed to make investments. The second important I keep saying is one is a quantitative and the second is the qualitative aspects. What is your psychological financial health? We keep talking about risk averse. We keep talking about various kind of, but I come up and says, what is my attitude towards managing my money? I might be a person who's comfortable taking a high risk and saying is okay, I don't need a steady cash flow. I have a relatively a healthier balance sheet out there, and I might see a kind of an upside, ups and downs out there. Probably my investment product needs to be different. The third very important aspects, which probably, I'm sorry, most of us Indians avoid out there, is what is my understanding about that financial product. That is very, very important. We always make investments saying, A said this, I'm making an investment, my friend guided me, without even understanding, do I know this particular product? And when we do that, we don't realize at some point of a time we have gone into some kind of a trap. And then it becomes very, very difficult for us to out. Our experiences are very bad, and then we go and blame that particular product, which is not the right kind of a scenario. So I say, if you have these four understandings, your financial health, your psychological attitude towards that financial health and financial expectations from your life, the third is your own ability to understand the financial products and your investment into that, and then you map it with your life stage. Now, one another aspects that I have adding it up, and after this is, I think all of us have been impacted by Corona. I look at it, we have made all those investments with various kind of an hard work in our life. We also needs to understand and start doing a kind of a consolidations or rationalization, if that who are the people who are going to get this particular wealth after me. I think we have never ever thought about it. And especially in this kind of a scenario, when we interact with so many people and the kind of an experience, we realize that people have built good amount of wealth after great difficulties. I know they today, the next generations who's getting that, they are practically not aware and they really do not know how to manage. So at some point of a time, you should also start looking at this. Who are the people who are going to get this particular wealth? What is their attitude towards this particular wealth? And what kind of a plans we need to manage so that they are able to enjoy the money which you are trying to create for themselves or leave for themselves. I think this is a very important aspect which we never thought of, but at least post Corona, I have started thinking about it. There's
Absolutely,
no
it's
point
very important.
yeah. So that's the another element which I'm adding, and based on that life stage, I'm saying is probably if I'm young and I have a very healthy balance sheet, I would definitely try and get product which just not compound but also multiply. So I started moving towards not just talking about the compounding effect, but if I have the ability to add that multiplier effect out there, I want to use that multiplier effect. But very important, I need to know at what stage, when I'm comfortable with what kind of a multiplier. Am I comfortable with n raised to power 3 or I want n raised to power 30? Both has its own risk, both has its own challenges, and both requires the various kind of an inputs. Please make that discipline. Please understand that profile of yours and start working on that.
Absolutely. There are some important cues for investors to consider. But there's also the fact of, for a lot of the young investors, right, the bad spending habits can be a deterrent to starting early investments. So how can these new investors tackle this issue? Because for them, it's always about, I want to live life now. Let's see what happens later on. But again, as we have discussed in our panels, the importance of starting early. The issue is, how do you overcome bad spending habits? What's your view on that?
I think spending is a very good word. I personally believe out there. But important is how and on what and where you are spending out there. The way I believe, I think the Gen X and the Gen Z will have a very different spending pattern or behavior than definitely what millennials out there. But both the generations, the people who are guiding the millennials, that how they are supposed to make, also need to understand their world. And if we understand, then probably we'll be able to guide them very, very clearly. So it may happens the millennial might comes up and says, I'm the global citizens and I don't want to stay into one particular city, one particular country. That's why I don't want to have the burden of having a house, but I want to travel. Perfectly fine. Probably then we need to communicate with them in that particular language that traveling is also not easy. If you want to pursue your hobby, that hobby comes with a cost. And for enjoying that hobby or pursuing that hobby, you will need some amount of healthy balance sheets, some amount of cash flows, and you need to plan for that. When we start talking to that particular language with them, probably they'll understand. And one thing is very sure, they all are smart people. They're very clear in their mind what they want. If we are able to use that behavior or characteristic trait of theirs and start communicating in that particular language, then probably we'll get in. The only thing is we need to shift the nature of goals. The another important aspect, at least which I try and communicate out there, is in our kind of a world or in our parents' kind of a world, the opportunities were very limited. We knew it if we have joined a particular job or a particular organization, we would be there for lifelong. Probably will change. In my generations, we probably start shifting, but probably millennials will change after every 2 years. But they would want to pursue multiple things. They want to work, they want to do a kind of a social service, they probably want to explore the world, but everything for that, they will require some amount of money. And if we can guide them that if you need to pursue a social service, there also you'll require some kind of a time, effort, money, and various kind of a thing. If you want to pursue golf as a game, or if I want to do agriculture also, all this would require money, and you need to plan for that. And you need to plan both in terms of your cash flows and your overall financial health. And the more and more you start, so let's take an example, it's just a photography, which is your hobby. You'll know today the kind of a specialization you need to do into photography, and what is the kind of a various resources that you require. If you want to buy a simple lens, you know what is the kind of a cost it would have. So if we are able to provide those kind of an input and insight to them, probably they will understand and start working and saving in the discipline. Similar to top of that, again, discipline. You can use various simple kind of a products and processes which are available out. Just a sheer discipline will help them. And a passion to add that, I think we are game on that particular piece.
Absolutely. I think that's a useful way to approach it. Know the ingredients of the cost of the, what you want to pursue, and it'll automatically frame the conversation for you in a new way. That's a great insight. But let's conclude the conversation by also looking at risk. What is the correlation between the age at which someone starts investing and their risk-taking abilities, and how does it impact their returns in the long run, in your opinion, Kirti?
I think that's very, very important point. And I'll go back to the earlier point, which was talking about the compounding and multiplier. And I keep saying this particular piece always. What is the advantage of investing early? Why we come back and says why you need to invest early in your life. The very important aspect, it improves your risk-taking capacity. The financial risk-taking capacity gets increased. So the way I come back and says every time, it's a kind of a cycle in which you gaze. You started earning early. In the initial stages, you slowly and slowly started compounding. That compounding help you to build a better balance sheet. Once you have a better balance sheet, you will have a better ability to put both more money and ability to generate better returns out of that. Once you have that, you further improve your balance sheet. So this cycle will keep on going. And the moment you are there into this particular cycle, you are constantly increasing your balance sheet. And this would move your balance sheet from a simple compounding to a multiplier. How does this happen? The another. The moment you have a better balance sheet or better asset size, your single stream of income to you move to multiple streams of income. So let's take an example. I am a salaried person. I'm working. One constant income stream for me is a salary. Now, because I've started making investment early, probably some equity investment, I'm getting dividend. It might have happened that I realized real estate is becoming a very good asset class and I made certain kind of an investment. I might get a rental income. Something happened and I still believe that now I have something more and I can do some another commodities or some other PMS or some overseas investments. Over a period of a time, I'm de-risking my single steady income source, which was salary, and I was 100% dependent on that particular stream. Now I have 5 more streams. And if I am very disciplined and organized and making the right kind of a decision, I can assure you that this single steady stream of income can become a very small percentage with this thing. But this requires discipline. This requires a very good amount of thinking. This requires very good amount of planning. This requires very good amount of advice. So I keep saying is it's a cycle, and if you start managing this cycle very well, please be rest assured you'll keep making your balance sheet healthy. You'll move from compounding to multiplier to higher multiplier to higher multiplier, and the moment you have a very stable, definitely your risk taking capacity has increased and your risk has come down. So that's my the another important aspect why happens out there is we all know that in today's scenario the longevity is increasing. So earlier, if we used to believe the average age in which a human being will live is around 60, we've moved to 65. Probably we see people into 70s, and I do not know if we come back and says by 2050 you will have the ability to decide how long you want to live. You need to ensure that to support this particular longevity, you need to move from compounding to multiply. Then only you'll be able to have a good financially healthy life. That's very, very important. And that's take me to the first question. It's extremely important to start early, start in a disciplined manner, and educate yourself. Keep on learning all new things which are coming out there. Invest in that particular learning, and I think you are game for that.
Absolutely. To, I guess, start the engine of investment growth, you start early, you manage the cycle well, and then reap the rewards of that engine running for long and running effectively. On that note, we'll conclude this conversation. Kirti, thank you so much for joining us for this talk about investing early to reap the benefits of time being on your side. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And well, for conversations on personal finance that have spanned retirement planning, navigating volatility, financial literacy, crisis management, financial independence, and of course, early investing, we heard a lot of important points being shared by our speakers today here at the Nivesh Mahakumbh. The highlights have been around the need to be diligent and disciplined in planning for investments, ideally with the support of your financial advisor. And while saving is important, remember, so is investing. And an easy to do that method, according to one of our speakers, is to reuse the term EMI as educate, monitor, investigate, and identify as you navigate an uncertain world in search of stability for your investments. Well, as we head to the concluding leg of the Nivesh Mahakumbh 2021, I'd like to invite back Mr. Rao to present a vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Rao.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Indeed, it was a wonderful day, and it's the last 3.5 hours was so charging. And first of all, my thanks to you, Gautam, for taking this initiative from the beginning to the end, and with that energy you kept alive. I have many people to thank, but before thanking, I was just looking at what things to look at. Bala is a keynote speaker who started and Kirti has ended. Just to take their two names, when we start, we need to start. Bala is in the Sanskrit name, you can look at it as a young. Start young, and then you get a Kirti when you are living around, you become a legend of investment. That's where the financial independence comes in. And it's indeed a great day of the 25th Nivesh Mahakumbh. And I personally thank all my friends at HT Media for a great support and great conceiving and organizing this. And to start with some of the speakers for the day, we started with our keynote speaker, Mr. Bala, who spoke about UCA world, and it's about right knowledge leads to right investment, leads to right mutual fund sahi hai, and that will leads to your financial independence. Then we have a wonderful panel. Thanks to Mr. Dhirendra, Seshi Krishnan, Lovai, and Bhavdeep on the reimagining retirement. It's all that we can take out from there is, do you have one plan? Then you can have that plan to go for and automate your investments. And that's where you need a right advisor. The message was very clear. This panel has made not only to ignited us to think something and inspired us to do something and initiate us to invest for retirement. And that's where financial freedom comes in. And Mahesh Patil, our CIO, it's navigating the current market volatility. Thanks to him for sharing his wisdom and how the adversity can be an opportunity and the journey of the COVID to COVID, how the market valuations to today, how you need to rebalance your portfolio, why one should not chase the returns, but why somebody need to be have a staggered investment. Thanks to Mahesh and thanks to all the panelists of the retirement work. And it is a day again. It's a day for the it is a very crucial day. I was just looking at. We had the 50% speakers are coming from the women fraternity, and nevertheless we have launched this for her. I think woman gets an equal importance, and it's how we can look at. And it's like thanks to the panel led by Mithali and Miss Pooja, Miss Gajal, and Pinky, Miss Pinky, the kind of message they gave. Thanks for their sharing their wisdom. And it's all that it has gone is financial education is key for women, and we need to look at. And again, I need to thank Mr. Bala and Tula for launching the for her. For her initiative is going to be the crucial initiative for us at Aditya Birla. I mean, as Mr. Bala said, we are planning to reach for the 2 million women investors and educating them. And all that we need to look at, we think it's whether women need to be educated or men need to be educated, but money doesn't know which gender it is managing. All that we need to know is how the money as a tool we need to manage, and education play a very vital role, and education can play very vital and significant role, and education is a passport for the future. That's where I look at how we can make this passport for the financial independence. Then comes we have a Rupa Venkatakrishnan, and Rupa spoke very nicely about, thanks to Ms. Rupa, how we can reset financially, and how the financial advisor is very important for our life. And the last panel on the millennials, and you can't get a better panel than this. I think thanks to Upasna, thanks to Harshul, Nikhil, and Harsh Jain. It is like it's the kind of message for the youngsters is how you can start from your my first paycheck. And this is a module we run at Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund across 26 universities for the young students. My personal thanks to them for conveying that message vociferously. And these are the people who spoke about the fire, but all of them, they have a fire in the belly. How many of us we start continuing, and we can get that financial, we can get that financial freedom, right? And the last, thanks to Kirti for joining us for the new nonsense, and taking us where to start and how to secure financial future. And I personally thank my team. Normally seldom we thank the team which works at the back end. I mean, who worked over last month, and it was always, and it is the 25th Nivesh Mahakumbh. We reached out lakhs of people, I mean investors across the country. And this time my personal thanks to HT Media and my team for making this event, reaching out to over 20,000 people as of now. And hopefully in the next few days, the social media can catch up and we have lakhs of people coming in. All said and done, and as we celebrate 75th Independence Day tomorrow, I mean, it's Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. Can we make the 75th Independence Day is a day where we can think and take a date for our financial independence. Spend time with family. I always call life is LIFE, living in freedom and living in financial empowerment. And that's where you need to have a family conversations. And mutual funds, we have a simple tool called SIP, how you can save, invest, I mean, systematically invest. But this SIP I call to get the financial independence. S is one need to save wisely, and I is invest smartly, P is plan purposefully. And that purpose can be a financial, that purpose could be a financial independence. Let us make it. And having coming from Aditya Birla Capital, ABC, I always say, aspire for your financial independence and believe that you can accomplish with the right plan. All that you need to have a commitment to honor your own commitment. Then I end with another ABC. Always be cheerful, and happy Independence Day and happy Financial Independence Day. Thank you so much for joining us, watching us, and being here. Indeed, we are grateful to all the audience who are here, and you. And it's like you took the time to be with us, and I thank my channel partners who have got with their advisors who have joined in. It's great, and wishing you all the financial independence and true happiness for us will come. Each of us become financially independent, and for that you need to start acting now. And that's what I say, COVID to Covin. That Covin is collective win. The WIN is what is important now. Important now is start acting. Thanks again, Mr. Gautam, for your energizing, mesmerizing, and vibrating sessions as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ra. Kind words from you, but also a powerful message there, the need to act now, especially when we look at financial independence. And Mr. Rao nicely encapsulated the day's proceedings. And to extend that message, since knowledge is power, we hope you can use these lessons and insights in your quest for financial independence. An exciting exchange of ideas you've seen from a galaxy of industry leaders, financial advisors, and subject matter experts as part of this mega event featuring 3 power pack panels and 3 fireside chats. So you've got all the information that you need. In celebration of India's 75th Independence Day, let us take the right steps to secure our financial future. Thank you again to all of our speakers for taking the time and being part of this journey. And of course, thank you to Mr. Rao as well. I'd like to mention here that Hindustan Times has had a brilliant collaboration with Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund over the last couple of years. And together we have collaborated to develop a popular fiction series, HT Friday Finance. So here's a short promotional film of the first season.
The wise one, the carefree friend, the foodie. Imagine a life without your friends. Unimaginable. Unimaginable, right? But life accelerates. Priorities shift. And friendships can change. Watch season 2 to find out how their friendship has evolved.
Indeed, we are very excited to collaborate for HT Friday Finance Season 2. Now, do keep an eye out for that preview on HT social media platforms. But meanwhile, thank you to everyone who tuned in today to watch this virtual mega event titled Nivesh Mahakumbh 2021. And here's wishing all of you a very happy Indian Independence Day. This is Gautam Srinivasan signing off.